J.C. Harris was a 45-year-old man who lived in Albany, New York. He worked as an employee for the New York state government. J.C. was known for his friendly personality and his strong dedication to his family. People at work liked him because he was dependable and hardworking. He often helped others and was very active in his community. J.C.'s life was not without its challenges. He was blind, having lost his sight in his early 20s due to retinitis pigmentosa, a genetic disorder that affects the retina. Despite this, J.C. never let his blindness hold him back. He learned to navigate the world with the help of a cane and was highly independent. He yearned to be an example to others that a disability should not hold you back. J.C. lived with his wife, Jessica Turner Harris. They had been married for over 15 years. Jessica was a successful wedding planner who often organized community events. They had one son, Pikachu, age 10, and were going through IVF to have another. J.C. loved spending time with his family. He often took them to Washington Park and the Albany Pine Bush Preserve for picnics and nature walks. In the days before his death, J.C. was excited about a new project at work. He had just received a promotion and was looking forward to starting his new role. He was also planning a family vacation to Disney World in Florida. J.C. had bought new luggage from Macy's and was talking about the trip with his family. He loved spending time with his son and wanted to create lasting memories with them. In October 2014, J.C.'s life seemed perfect. He had a loving family, a successful career, and plans for an exciting future. But behind the happy facade, trouble was brewing. J.C. was unaware of the dark secrets and hidden tensions that would soon turn his world upside down. His life, filled with hope and dreams, would be tragically cut short in a violent and shocking way. On October 14, 2014, it was a chilly Tuesday morning in Albany, New York. At around 8:30 a.m., Kevin Brown, a co-worker of J.C. Harris, arrived at the New York State office building. Kevin had come in early to discuss a project with J.C. They had been working together on a new initiative for the state government. Kevin noticed that J.C.'s office door was slightly open, which was unusual for him. Kevin knocked on the door but got no response. Feeling uneasy, he pushed the door open and was immediately struck by a gruesome sight. J.C. was lying on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. His body was covered with stab wounds, and his eyes were gouged out. A bloody letter opener was lying next to him. The scene was horrifying and grotesque, unlike anything Kevin had ever seen. Kevin felt a wave of panic and fear. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone to call 911. His voice was shaky as he explained to the operator what he had found. Kevin was scared and could barely believe what he was seeing. He knew he had to stay calm and give the police all the information they needed. Within minutes, the Albany Police Department arrived at the scene. The first officers to arrive quickly secured the area and called for backup. Kevin, still in shock, sat down in a nearby chair as the officers began their investigation. He tried to answer their questions as best as he could, but his mind was racing. He couldn't understand who would do such a terrible thing to J.C., who was well-liked by everyone. News of the murder quickly spread through the office and the local community. People were shocked and saddened by the loss of J.C., a man who had touched many lives with his kindness and dedication. The Albany Times-Union reported on the murder, and the story was also covered by local TV stations. J.C.'s death left a deep impact on everyone who knew him. The violent and sudden nature of his murder shook the community, and people began to wonder who could have committed such a horrible crime. On October 14, 2014, the Albany Police Department responded quickly to the 911 call about J.C. Harris' murder. Patrol officers were the first to arrive at the New York State office building where J.C.'s body was found. They secured the area to ensure no evidence would be disturbed. They called for backup immediately. Detective Natalie Lawson and Detective Paul Johnson arrived soon after. Detective Lawson was known for a careful and detailed approach to investigations, while Detective Johnson was recognized for his sharp intuition and ability to read crime scenes. As they entered J.C.'s office, they were met with a horrific sight. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, walls, and even the desk. Papers were scattered across the room, and the letter opener, the murder weapon, lay nearby, covered in blood. The brutality of the crime was shocking. Detective Lawson began to photograph the scene, while Detective Johnson examined the body. J.C. had been stabbed multiple times, and his eyes had been gouged out, indicating a crime of intense anger and betrayal. They knew this was not a random act of violence, but a targeted attack. The detectives collected evidence meticulously. They took samples of the blood, fingerprints from the door and desk, and gathered any other physical evidence that might help identify the murderer. They also collected JC's phone and computer to look for any clues about his recent activities and contacts. Forensic experts arrived to assist with the investigation. They used tools like luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains and special cameras to capture detailed images of the crime scene. The experts also examined the letter opener for any traces of DNA or fingerprints that could lead to the killer. As the investigation continued, Detective Lawson and Detective Johnson interviewed Kevin Brown, who had discovered the body. Kevin was still in shock but tried his best to provide any useful information. He described JC as a well-liked and respected colleague with no known enemies at work. The detectives also spoke to JC's other coworkers and friends. They learned about his recent promotion and his plans for a family vacation. Everyone described JC as a kind and dedicated person, making the crime even more puzzling. Detective Lawson and Detective Johnson knew they had to act fast. They needed to find out who had the motive and opportunity to kill JC. The pressure was on to solve the case and bring justice to JC and his grieving family. The gruesome crime scene provided many clues, but it would take careful analysis and keen investigative skills to uncover the truth behind the violent murder. Jessica Turner Harris, JC's wife, was the first suspect in the investigation. Jessica, 43, was a well-known wedding planner in Albany. She was successful and often organized big community events. Jessica was known for her sociable nature and friendly personality. However, despite their seemingly happy marriage, Jessica had doubts about JC's fidelity. Jessica had been aware of rumors about JC's possible affair. She had noticed changes in his behavior and had grown suspicious over time. Jessica loved her family deeply but couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. This led the police to consider her as a possible suspect. Detectives Navely Lawson and Paul Johnson brought Jessica in for questioning. She appeared calm, but clearly distressed about her husband's brutal murder. The detectives asked her about her relationship with JC and if she had noticed any changes in his behavior recently. Jessica admitted she had suspicions about JC having an affair but denied any involvement in his death. Jessica explained that on the night of the murder, she was at home with their son Pikachu. She provided details about their evening, saying they had dinner together and watched the movie Eyes Wide Shut before going to bed. The detectives checked her alibi by speaking with her son and looking at phone records. Everything seemed to match her story. Despite her calm demeanor, Jessica's emotions were evident. She was grieving the loss of her husband and struggling to understand why someone would kill him so brutally. The detectives noted her emotional state and continued to probe for more information. As part of the investigation, the police searched Jessica's belongings and found no evidence linking her directly to the crime. They also reviewed her financial records and found nothing suspicious. Jessica's friends and colleagues described her as a loving wife and mother, further supporting her innocence. However, the detectives couldn't ignore the fact that Jessica knew about JC's possible affair. They wondered if this knowledge could have driven her to commit the crime. They questioned her about her feelings toward JC and if she ever confronted him about the rumors. Jessica admitted she had confronted him once, but JC had denied everything. Jessica's cooperation with the investigation and lack of concrete evidence against her led the detectives to look at other suspects. While she remained a person of interest, the focus shifted to other individuals who might have had a motive to kill JC. The police were determined to find the truth. Jessica's story added another layer to the complex case, but without solid evidence, the detectives knew they had to keep looking for the real murderer. The investigation was far from over, and the detectives continued to search for answers. The second suspect in the investigation was Megan Turner, Jessica's younger sister. Megan, 28, was a freelance graphic designer living in Albany. She was outgoing and ambitious, often described as a person who sought validation and affection from older men. Megan was also known by another name, Dulcimer Geisha, her stage name as an exotic dancer at a local club. This part of her life was not widely known to her family and friends. Megan had a history of minor criminal behavior, including a few shoplifting incidents and a DUI from her early 20s. Her past raised red flags for the detectives, who wondered if her lifestyle could be connected to JC's murder. Megan often spent overnight stays at Jessica and JC's house, ostensibly to help Jessica design specialized website for her couples, but it became clear she had a closer relationship with JC than previously thought. Detectives Navely Lawson and Paul Johnson brought Megan in for questioning. She seemed nervous but cooperative. The detectives asked her about her relationship with JC and her activities on the night of the murder. Megan admitted she was close to JC and often confided in him. She claimed she was at home alone on the night of the murder, working on a graphic design project for a local business. Megan's alibi was shaky, as she had no one to corroborate her story. The detectives probed deeper, asking about her work as dulcimer geisha and her criminal past. Megan became defensive but maintained her innocence. She insisted that she had nothing to do with JC's death and that their relationship was purely platonic. The detectives found evidence that Megan had been at JC's office the day before the murder, supposedly discussing a project with him behind closed doors. They also discovered text messages, described as flirty, between Megan and JC that suggested a more intimate relationship. The messages showed Megan expressing feelings of sexual attraction toward JC, who seemed to be trying to distance himself from her. Despite the evidence pointing to a possible motive, Megan continued to deny any involvement. She admitted to feeling hurt by JC's attempts to end their relationship, but claimed she would never harm him. The detectives noted her emotional responses and erratic behavior during the interrogation. The police searched Megan's apartment and found items linking her to her stage persona, but nothing directly connecting her to the murder. They continued to gather evidence and interview people who knew Megan, including colleagues at the graphic design firm and the club where she performed. As the investigation progressed, Megan remained a key suspect due to her close relationship with JC, her criminal past, and her emotional instability. However, without concrete evidence, the detectives knew they needed to keep digging. The truth behind JC's murder was still elusive, and the investigation was far from over. The third suspect in the investigation was Kevin Brown, a co-worker of JC Harris. Kevin, 40, worked in the same New York State office as JC. He was known to have a short temper and had made several complaints about JC's work style and methods. Kevin had been passed over for a promotion that JC received, causing tension between the two. Even more suspicious, Kevin was the one who discovered JC's body and the person to see him last before he died. Detectives Neville Lawson and Paul Johnson brought Kevin in for questioning. Kevin, who was tall with a gruff demeanor, seemed defensive from the start. The detectives asked him about his relationship with JC and his feelings about not getting the promotion. Kevin admitted he was frustrated but claimed he had no reason to harm JC. Kevin said that on the night of the murder, he was at home watching a football game between the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. He provided the names of friends who could confirm his alibi. The detectives checked with Kevin's friends, who confirmed his story. However, the detectives were not convinced and decided to dig deeper. Kevin had a history of workplace conflicts. He had been involved in several arguments with other coworkers and had even received a warning for his behavior. The detectives wondered if his anger toward JC could have escalated to violence. They looked into Kevin's past and found a history of minor offenses, including a bar fight from a few years ago. The police searched Kevin's apartment for any evidence that might link him to the murder. They found several knives, but none matched the letter opener used in the crime. They also examined his computer and phone records. Kevin had sent a few angry emails to JC in the past, but nothing that indicated a direct threat. During the interrogation, Kevin's responses were terse and defensive. He denied any involvement in JC's murder and insisted he had moved on from the promotion incident. The detectives noted his body language and tone, looking for any signs of deception. Kevin's frustration was evident, but there was no solid evidence to connect him to the crime. The detectives continued to monitor Kevin's activities and interviewed his coworkers. They found mixed opinions about him. Some described him as hardworking but temperamental, while others saw him as a potential threat due to his frequent outbursts. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, Kevin remained a person of interest in the case. The detectives knew they had to keep exploring all angles. They needed more than just suspicions to prove his involvement. As the investigation progressed, Kevin's role in JC's life and death continued to be a focal point. On October 18, 2014, 4 days after JC Harris' murder, the Albany Police Department received a crucial piece of new evidence. It was a chilly, overcast morning when a maintenance worker named Peter Willis found a blood-stained glove in a trash can behind the New York State office building where JC worked. Peter immediately reported his discovery to the police. Detectives Neville Lawson and Paul Johnson quickly arrived at the scene. They carefully collected the glove and sent it to the forensic lab for analysis. The detectives hoped this new evidence would provide the breakthrough they needed. Later that afternoon, the forensic team, led by Dr. Amelia Cheonyang, began examining the glove. She and her team found traces of JC's blood on the glove. Along with DNA that did not belong to JC, this new DNA sample was crucial as it could potentially identify the murderer. Meanwhile, the detectives revisited the crime scene to search for any other overlooked evidence. They examined the office and surrounding areas with a fresh perspective. Using advanced forensic tools like luminol, they discovered faint blood traces leading from JC's office to the back exit of the building. This suggested that the murderer had left through that door, possibly discarding the glove along the way. The police then reviewed security footage from nearby cameras. They focused on the back exit, hoping to identify anyone who might have used it around the time of the murder. After hours of watching the footage, they spotted a shadowy figure leaving the building late at night, wearing a hoodie and gloves. Although the footage was grainy, it provided a possible lead. Back at the lab, Dr. Chiong Yang compared the DNA from the glove to the samples they had from the suspects. The results came back quickly, matching Megan Turner's DNA. This was a significant breakthrough. Megan had already been a key suspect due to her close relationship with JC and her emotional instability. Detectives Lawson and Johnson decided to bring Megan in for further questioning. They confronted her with the new evidence. Megan initially denied any involvement, but as the detectives presented the DNA match, her composure began to crack. She admitted to being at the office that night but claimed she had no memory of committing the murder. Her erratic behavior and conflicting statements made the detectives even more suspicious. The new evidence shifted the focus of the investigation sharply toward Megan. The glove, the DNA match, and her proximity to JC on the night of the murder all pointed to her involvement. The detectives knew they were getting closer to solving the case, but they needed more information to secure a conviction. With the new evidence in hand, the police intensified their investigation. Determined to uncover the full truth behind JC Harris's tragic death, the community awaited answers as the detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the final parts of the puzzle. On October 22, 2014, Albany police made a significant breakthrough in the murder case of JC Harris. Megan Turner, 28, was officially identified as the murderer. The arrest followed crucial evidence linking Megan to the crime, including a DNA match from a blood-stained glove found near the scene. Megan was a freelance graphic designer and also worked as an exotic dancer under the name Dulcimer Geisha. The twist in the case came when police discovered that Jessica Turner Harris, JC's wife, had actually known about the affair between Megan and JC for months. Jessica, who always had an intense sibling rivalry with her sister, had been secretly blackmailing Megan to keep the relationship going. Jessica's aim was to gather enough evidence to ruin Megan's reputation and career. This manipulation added a shocking layer to the crime. Detectives Natalie Lawson and Paul Johnson, who had been leading the investigation, received the tip from Jessica and Megan's widowed father about Jessica's involvement. They learned that Jessica, who had always been jealous of Megan's good looks, had been using her knowledge of the affair to coerce Megan into keeping the relationship alive. This revelation was confirmed by Jessica's text messages and emails, which showed she was actively blackmailing Megan with sexually explicit pictures of her and JC. On the day of Megan's arrest, the weather in Albany was cool and overcast. Detectives Lawson and Johnson arrived at Megan's apartment, which was located in a modest area near Washington Park. Megan was at home, preparing for her evening shift at the club where she performed as Dulcimer Geisha. When the police approached, Megan seemed shocked but cooperative. She was taken into custody without resistance. The arrest was widely covered by local media, including the Albany Times-Union and WNYT News Channel 13. The media reported the new twist in the case, including Jessica's role in manipulating Megan. During the interrogation, Megan admitted to killing JC in a fit of rage after he tried to end their affair. She revealed how Jessica's blackmail and manipulation had driven her to a breaking point. Megan described the murder in detail, including how she used a letter opener to stab JC multiple times and left his body in a grotesque display. Megan's confession and the new evidence provided a clear motive and detailed the tragic culmination of manipulation, obsession, and betrayal. The police were able to piece together the full story, showing how Jessica's indirect influence had pushed Megan to commit the crime. Megan Turner was charged with first-degree murder. The arrest and the unraveling of the twisted motivations behind the crime brought a new level of understanding to the case. The investigation revealed a complex web of deceit that had led to JC Harris's tragic death. The community and media followed the case closely as the search for justice continued. Megan Turner's trial began on December 1, 2014 at the Albany County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators eager to follow the high-profile case. Megan, 28, faced charges of first-degree murder for the killing of J.C. Harris, a case that had captured local attention. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Becca Cole, known for her clear and compelling arguments. Cole presented a strong case against Megan, using evidence like Megan's confession, the DNA from the blood-stained glove, and Jessica Turner Harris's blackmail. Cole argued that Megan's actions were driven by obsession and manipulation. She detailed how Jessica had used her knowledge of the affair to coerce Megan, adding a layer of manipulation to the crime. During the trial, Cole highlighted the severity of the crime. She described how Megan had brutally attacked JC with a letter opener, leaving his body in a grotesque display. The prosecution emphasized that Megan's violent reaction was a direct result of the emotional manipulation and stress caused by Jessica. Megan's defense attorney, Juan Carter, 50, was known for his calm and methodical approach. Carter argued that Megan had acted out of intense emotional distress rather than premeditation. He suggested that Megan's mental state, combined with the pressure from Jessica's blackmail, had led her to commit the murder in a moment of rage. Carter claimed that Megan did not intend to kill JC, but her actions were the result of extreme emotional turmoil. Throughout the trial, Megan's family remained in the courtroom, visibly distressed. They hoped for a fair outcome, but were deeply troubled by the evidence and the serious nature of the charges. JC's family, including his wife Jessica, attended the trial to seek justice and to understand the full extent of the tragedy. The jury deliberated for several hours and returned a verdict on December 9, 2014. Megan Turner was found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury's decision was based on the evidence presented, including the confession, DNA match, and the emotional impact of the blackmail on Megan. On December 15, 2014, Megan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's decision was met with mixed reactions. Some felt the sentence was justified given the brutality of the crime, while others believed it was a harsh punishment. JC's family and friends felt a sense of closure with the verdict. They could begin to heal from the loss of JC, knowing that justice had been served. The trial had shed light on a tragic story of obsession and manipulation, emphasizing the far-reaching effects of deceit and betrayal. The case was a reminder of the importance of justice and the impact of emotional and psychological manipulation. After Megan Turner's sentencing on December 15, 2014, the lives of everyone involved in the case changed dramatically. Megan, 28, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of J.C. Harris. Her trial had been widely covered by local media such as the Albany Times-Union and WNYK News Channel 13. In prison, Megan faced a difficult adjustment. Known for her secretive and troubled past, she struggled with the reality of her life sentence. Her family, who had been supportive throughout the trial, found it hard to cope with the outcome. They visited her occasionally but were deeply affected by the nature of her crime. Jessica Turner Harris, JC's wife, continued to deal with the fallout from the case. The revelation of her blackmailing Megan had caused a scandal. Jessica faced public scrutiny and criticism for her role in manipulating Megan. Despite her actions being a significant factor in the case, Jessica remained focused on her family and her work as a wedding planner. She tried to rebuild her life and restore some sense of normalcy for her son, Pikachu. Overall, the murder of J.C. Harris and Megan Turner's subsequent arrest and trial had far-reaching effects on everyone involved. The case highlighted the tragic consequences of betrayal and manipulation, underscoring the importance of addressing mental health and emotional issues. The community, while moving forward, would always remember the case that shocked Albany and the profound impact it had on their lives. Today, we explore the life and tragic death of a stay-at-home mom who found herself at the center of a tangled web of secrets, desires, and betrayal, a web that ultimately led to her untimely demise. Tina Boland was a 42-year-old stay-at-home mom who lived in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. She was well known in her community as a friendly and sociable woman who was always willing to lend a helping hand. Tina was the kind of neighbor who remembered birthdays, organized block parties, and never missed a chance to volunteer at her children's school events. She lived with her husband, Michael Boland, a 46-year-old insurance agent, and their two teenage children aged 16 and 15. In April 2014, Tina was at the peak of her involvement in the neighborhood. Tina was often seen driving her kids to practice in her blue Honda Odyssey, stopping by the local Starbucks for a caramel macchiato on the way. She was also active in her church, where she helped coordinate charity drives and bake sales. But Tina's life had another side, one that few knew about. Beneath her outward appearance as a devoted wife and mother, Tina was involved in a series of secret sexual relationships with other women in her community. These relationships were kept hidden from her family and most of her other friends. Tina was the belle of the ball in this secret circle, engaging in passionate sexual affairs with approximately a half-dozen other stay-at-home moms in her neighborhood. She enjoyed the thrill of these relationships, which gave her a sense of excitement and freedom that she didn't find in her bland suburban life. In the days leading up to her death, Tina was particularly excited about her new relationship with Hope Johnson, a 45-year-old woman who had recently moved into the neighborhood. Tina's friends noticed that she seemed happier than usual, but they had no idea of the secret life she was living. This hidden world, filled with desire and jealousy, would soon lead to a tragedy that would shock the entire community. On the morning of April 15, 2014, at approximately 8:30 a.m., Tina Boland's lifeless body was discovered at the bottom of the stairs in her home in Rio Rancho of New Mexico. It was a typical spring morning, with the sun shining brightly and the sound of birds chirping in the trees outside. The discovery was made by Lisa deAngeles, Tina's close friend and neighbor, who had come over after not receiving any responses to her text and calls the night before. Lisa and Tina had a strong bond, often meeting up at the local Panera Bread for coffee and catching up on the latest gossip. That morning, when Lisa arrived at Tina's house, she noticed that the front door was slightly ajar. Concerned, she called out Tina's name as she stepped inside, but there was no response. As she walked further into the house, her heart began to race. The house was eerily quiet, with the faint sound of the TV playing in the background. When Lisa reached the staircase, she was met with a sight that would haunt her forever. Tina was lying at the bottom of the stairs, her body twisted in an unnatural position. She was wearing a light blue nightgown, and her hair was matted with blood from a cut on her lip. Lisa froze in shock, her mind racing to make sense of what she was seeing. After a few moments, Lisa snapped out of her daze and frantically dialed 911. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the operator, trying to explain what she had found. The 911 operator remained calm, asking Lisa to stay on the line until help arrived. Lisa could hardly keep her composure as she paced back and forth, her eyes never leaving Tina's motionless body. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air as emergency responders arrived at the scene. Lisa was visibly shaken as paramedics rushed into the house. She stepped aside to let them work, her hands trembling as she watched them assess Tina's condition. Despite their efforts, it was clear that Tina was already gone. The paramedics confirmed that Tina was dead, and Lisa collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. The tragedy of Tina Boland's death had just begun to unfold, leaving a community in shock and searching for answers. The Rio Rancho Police Department arrived quickly at Tina Boland's home on April 15, 2014, around 8:45 a.m., just minutes after Lisa deAngeles called 911. The first officers on the scene were Detective Martina Lopez, a seasoned investigator known for her sharp instincts, and Officer James Carson, a young patrolman with 2 years on the force. As they entered the house, they were met with the unsettling sight of Tina's body at the bottom of the stairs. Detective Lopez immediately took charge, instructing Officer Carson to secure the scene and make sure no one else entered the home. The staircase where Tina was found was carpeted with beige walls that showed no signs of a struggle. Tina's body was lying in a twisted position, her head turned awkwardly to the side. A small pool of blood had formed under her head, but the scene was relatively clean, with no obvious signs of a violent altercation. The detective carefully examined the area around Tina's body. The staircase was steep, with wooden railings that seemed solid and well-maintained. Lopez noted that Tina was barefoot, and there was a noticeable absence of anything that could have caused her to trip. The nightgown Tina was wearing was slightly torn at the hem, but there were no visible signs of a fight. As she continued her inspection, Lopez's eyes were drawn to a few details that seemed out of place. Tina's phone was found halfway down the stairs, its screen cracked, as if it had been dropped during a fall. But there was something odd about the position of Tina's body. It didn't match the typical pattern seen in accidental falls. The angle at which she had landed raised immediate red flags for the detective. The paramedics who had already confirmed Tina's death stepped back as the police continued their investigation. Detective Lopez ordered a full forensic sweep of the house. She wanted to ensure that every possible piece of evidence was collected. Bettine used luminol to check for any hidden traces of blood, and fingerprint powder was dusted on the stair railings and nearby surfaces. As Lopez observed the scene, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than met the eye. Her instincts told her that Tina's death might not be the tragic accident it first appeared to be. The lack of defensive wounds, the strange position of the body, and the eerie stillness of the house all pointed to something more sinister. With this in mind, the investigation would move forward with a closer look at those closest to Tina, beginning with her husband and her friends. Lisa deAngeles, 39, was the first person police turned to in their investigation. Known in the neighborhood as a nurturing and caring individual, Lisa had a reputation for being a devoted friend, especially to Tina Boland. They were often seen together at local spots like Panera Bread, and their children played together frequently. But as the police began to dig deeper, they uncovered a relationship between Lisa and Tina that went far beyond friendship. During her initial interrogation, Lisa appeared shaken but cooperative. Detective Marina Lopez, who was leading the investigation, noted Lisa's nervousness. She fidgeted constantly, her hands trembling as she answered questions. At first, Lisa described her friendship with Tina in typical terms, talking about their shared activities and the closeness they had developed over the years. However, as the questioning continued, it became clear that there was much more to their relationship. Under pressure, Lisa admitted that she and Tina had been involved in a secret sexual relationship for several months. The revelation stunned the detectives. Lisa described the relationship as passionate but complicated. Tina had confided in her, revealing that she was unhappy in her marriage and found comfort and excitement in their affair, and that Lisa made her feel like, quote, a Disney princess. But recently, things had taken a turn for the worse. Lisa explained that Tina had started to pull away from her, becoming increasingly distant. Tina had met a new neighbor, Hope Johnson, and had quickly developed a sexual relationship with her. Lisa confessed that she felt jealous and hurt, and she and Tina had argued about it several times, especially after Lisa had caught Hope and Tina having sex in her daughter's bed. Just a few days before Tina's death, Lisa had confronted her, telling Tina that she couldn't continue their relationship as she was seeing someone else. The police were intrigued by Lisa's admission. Jealousy was a powerful motive, and Lisa's emotional state raised suspicions. But when asked directly if she had anything to do with Tina's death, Lisa firmly denied it. She claimed that their argument was heated, but not violent. According to Lisa, she left Tina's house that evening upset, but never imagined it would be the last time she saw her friend alive. Lisa's interrogation left detectives with more questions than answers. Her jealousy was evident, and her connection to Tina placed her squarely under the microscope. But without concrete evidence, they couldn't make an arrest. The investigation would have to continue, with detectives looking closely at the other people in Tina's life who might have had a reason to harm her. Hope Johnson, 45, was the second person the police turned to in their investigation. Hope had recently moved to Rio Rancho from Atlanta, Georgia, just 6 months prior to Tina Boland's death. On the surface, Hope appeared to be a polished and professional woman. She was a real estate agent known for her sharp business acumen and poised demeanor. Her arrival in the neighborhood had caused a bit of a stir, with many of the local moms curious about the new resident. Hope's relationship with Tina had developed quickly. Neighbors noticed that the two women were often together, sharing private moments at local spots like the Starbucks on Southern Boulevard. They frequently texted each other, and there were whispers that their relationship might be more than just friendship. When Detective Marina Lopez questioned Hope, she maintained a calm and composed exterior, but there was an underlying tension that the detective couldn't ignore. Hope initially downplayed her relationship with Tina, describing it as a friendly connection formed through shared interests and neighborhood activities. However, when pressed, Hope admitted that their relationship had become intimate. Hope described Tina as someone who was charming and fun to be around, but also very persistent. She claimed that Tina had made the first move, DM her naked pictures, and suggesting they take their friendship to, quote, a place beyond your wildest dreams. At first, Hope was hesitant, knowing that Tina was married, but eventually, she gave in to the excitement of their secret affair. Despite the close bond they shared, Hope insisted that she had no reason to harm Tina. She revealed that Tina had recently begun expressing more serious feelings for her, even hinting at leaving her husband, Michael, to be with her. But this level of commitment made Hope uncomfortable. She had only just settled into the neighborhood and was dealing with her own marital issues. The last thing she wanted was to be entangled in a scandal. Hope's calm demeanor began to crack when detectives asked about the night of Tina's death. Hope claimed she was at home with her husband, but there was something in her voice that made the detectives doubt her story. Text messages retrieved from Tina's phone showed that Hope and Tina had been in contact late into the evening, and some of the messages suggested tension between them. There were even videos of the two having sex, which Hope had shared with other soccer moms in a way that flaunted their relationship. Though Hope denied any involvement in Tina's death, her connection to the victim and the underlying jealousy she harbored made her a key suspect in the investigation. The police would need more evidence to either confirm or clear her of suspicion. Michael Boland, 46, was the third person the police focused on in their investigation. As Tina Boland's husband, Michael was naturally a person of interest. Michael worked as an insurance agent, a job that kept him busy and often on the road. Neighbors described him as a quiet and somewhat distant figure, rarely seen at community events or social gatherings. He seemed to prefer spending his time away from home. And it was common knowledge that his relationship with Tina had been strained for years. When Detective Martina Lopez and her team interviewed Michael, he appeared stoic and detached, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil surrounding Tina's death. He admitted that his marriage to Tina had been rocky for some time. They had grown apart, with Michael spending more and more time on business trips or simply avoiding being at home. "I needed to get away from that awful woman," Michael said during the interview, his words carrying a bitterness that raised red flags for the detectives. Michael claimed he had no idea about Tina's secret sexual relationships with other women. He insisted that he was completely unaware of her affair with Lisa deAngeles and was shocked to learn about her involvement with Hope Johnson. However, the detectives couldn't help but wonder if Michael's ignorance was genuine or if he was hiding something. The night of Tina's death, Michael told the police he had been out of town on a business trip in Los Angeles. He provided the names of colleagues who could verify his whereabouts, and at first glance, his alibi seemed solid. But there was something about Michael's demeanor that didn't sit right with the detectives. He was too calm, too measured, and his lack of visible grief made them suspicious. The investigation into Michael's possible motive revealed that he had a lot to lose if his marriage to Tina ended in divorce. Tina had inherited a significant amount of money from her parents, and if they divorced, Michael would likely lose access to that wealth. Moreover, there were rumors that Michael had been seeing other women and even some men during his frequent business trips, adding another layer of complexity to the case. Despite a strong alibi, Michael remained on the police's radar. His distant relationship with Tina, his financial concerns, and his possible infidelity all pointed to a potential motive. The detectives knew they needed to dig deeper into Michael's life and alibi before they could rule him out as a suspect. On April 18, 2014, 3 days after Tina Boland's death, a significant breakthrough came in the form of new evidence. It was a cool, overcast morning in Rio Rancho, and Detective Martina Lopez was reviewing the case files when she received a call from the forensic team. They had discovered something unusual in Tina's home, a small but telling detail that had initially been overlooked. The new evidence was a scuff mark on the wall near the bottom of the stairs where Tina had been found. The mark was faint, but it suggested that something, or someone, had made contact with the wall during the fall. Forensic experts used advanced techniques, including 3D imaging, to analyze the mark. They concluded that it was consistent with the sole of a shoe, indicating that Tina might have been pushed or tripped rather than having fallen accidentally. This discovery was a turning point in the investigation. The scuff mark suggested foul play, and Detective Lopez knew they had to revisit the crime scene with fresh eyes. The forensic team also found traces of skin cells under Tina's fingernails, which were sent to the lab for DNA analysis. This led the police to consider that Tina might have fought back against her attacker. With this new evidence, the detectives intensified their focus on the three main suspects: Lisa deAngeles, Hope Johnson, and Michael Boland. They brought each of them back in for further questioning, this time armed with the knowledge that Tina's death was likely no accident. The discovery of the scuff mark and the DNA evidence under Tina's nails suggested that she had struggled with someone before her fatal fall. The police also re-examined the text messages on Tina's phone, paying closer attention to the exchanges she had with Lisa and Hope in the hours leading up to her death. The messages hinted at tension and jealousy, particularly between Tina and Lisa. These messages, combined with the new physical evidence, pointed to a possible confrontation. As the investigation progressed, Detective Lopez felt they were closing in on the truth. The new evidence gave the team a clearer picture of what might have happened that night. Tina's death was beginning to look less like a tragic accident and more like the result of a heated altercation. The police were determined to find out who was responsible, knowing that the scuff mark on the wall and the DNA under Tina's nails could be the key to solving the case. On April 20, 2014, the investigation into Tina Boland's death took a decisive turn. The DNA analysis from the skin cells found under Tina's fingernails came back with a match. Lisa deAngeles. This discovery, combined with the scuff mark on the wall near the stairs, led Detective Martina Lopez to believe that Tina's death was not an accident, but a homicide. Lisa deAngeles, 39, was a stay-at-home mom known for her nurturing personality. However, beneath her calm exterior, she harbored deep insecurities and fears of losing the people she loved. Tina Boland was at the center of these fears. While their sexual relationship had been the most passionate one of their lives, it was also fraught with jealousy and tension. When Tina started having sex with her new neighbor, Hoke Johnson, Lisa felt threatened and betrayed. On the night of April 15, 2014, Tina and Lisa had a heated argument at Tina's home after Lisa caught Hope and Tina having sex. The argument escalated quickly, with emotions running high. Lisa, in a fit of jealousy and desperation, pushed Tina during the argument. The push caused Tina to lose her balance and fall down the stairs, hitting her head on the way down. The scuff mark on the wall was from Tina's shoe as she tried to regain her balance. The detectives pieced together that Tina had fought back, scratching Lisa in the process, which explained the skin cells under Tina's nails. After realizing what had happened, Lisa panicked. She left the scene, hoping the fall would be ruled an accident, but the physical evidence told a different story. On the morning of April 21, 2014, the police moved to arrest Lisa deAngeles. Detective Lopez, along with a team of officers, arrived at Lisa's home. Lisa was visibly shaken when the police informed her that she was under arrest for the murder of Tina Boland. She didn't resist but appeared in shock, as if the reality of her actions had only just hit her. As she was led away in handcuffs, Lisa muttered that she never meant to hurt Tina. She just wanted her back. The arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. Tina's family, especially her husband Michael, was devastated by the news. They had lost a wife and mother, and now they had to come to terms with the fact that her death was the result of a senseless act of jealousy. Michael, who had been cleared of any wrongdoing, expressed his disbelief that someone so close to Tina could do something so terrible. The trial of Lisa deAngeles for the murder of Tina Boland began in late October 2014 at the Sandoval County Courthouse. The case had garnered significant media attention, with local news outlets like KRQE and the Albuquerque Journal covering every development. The courtroom was packed with spectators, including many of Tina's friends and family members who were eager to see justice served. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney James Wallace, a 45-year-old seasoned prosecutor known for his tenacity in the courtroom. Wallace argued that Lisa deAngeles had acted out of intense jealousy, leading her to push Tina down the stairs during a heated argument. He presented the physical evidence, including the scuff mark on the wall and the DNA analysis of the skin cells found under Tina's fingernails. Wallace emphasized that Tina's death was not an accident, but the result of a deliberate act of violence. On the other side, the defense was handled by public defender Karen Michalowski, a 38-year-old attorney known for a compassionate approach to her clients. Michalowski argued that Lisa's actions were not premeditated and that the push was a result of an emotional outburst rather than an intent to kill. She portrayed Lisa as a woman who was deeply in love with Tina and had simply lost control in a moment of overwhelming emotion. Michalowski pleaded with the jury to consider Lisa's remorse and the fact that she had no prior history of violence. Throughout the trial, Tina's family watched with a mix of grief and anger. Michael Boland, Tina's husband, struggled to hold back tears as he listened to the details of his wife's final moments. The impact of Tina's death on her family was clear, and their presence in the courtroom served as a reminder of the real human cost of the crime. After several days of testimony and evidence presentation, the jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning with a verdict. On November 3, 2014, Lisa deAngeles was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison, a sentence that many in the courtroom felt was too lenient given the circumstances. The verdict brought some closure to Tina's family, but the pain of losing her would never fully heal. For Lisa, the sentence marked the beginning of a long journey of reflection and regret. The trial and its outcome left a lasting impact on the Rio Rancho community, a stark reminder of how quickly love can turn to tragedy. After the trial, life in Rio Rancho slowly returned to normal, but the community was forever changed by the events surrounding Tina Boland's death. For Tina's family, the aftermath was a mix of sorrow and adjustment. Michael Boland, now a single parent, focused on rebuilding his life and caring for his children. He continued working as an insurance agent, but his once quiet demeanor became even more reserved. Michael found solace in his work and spending time with his children, who were struggling to cope with the loss of their mother. Lisa deAngeles, after being convicted of second-degree murder, began serving her 20-year sentence at the New Mexico Women's Correctional Facility. Her life in prison was marked by isolation and reflection. The once active community member now faced a daily routine behind bars. Lisa's trial and conviction were covered extensively by local news outlets like KORQB, and her case became a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked jealousy and emotional turmoil. For Hope Johnson, the new neighbor who had been a suspect in the case, life went on with a mixture of relief and continued anxiety. She moved away from Rio Rancho shortly after the trial concluded, seeking a fresh start in a new city. Her reputation in the neighborhood had been tarnished, despite being cleared of any wrongdoing, and she felt it was best to leave behind the memories of the past year. The impact of Tina Boland's death and Lisa deAngeles' trial extended beyond the immediate circle of those involved. It served as a sobering reminder of how personal relationships and emotional conflicts can escalate into devastating outcomes. The case highlighted the importance of addressing and managing emotional issues before they spiral out of control, leaving a lasting mark on the community and those who lived through it. Janice Orville, 45, was a well-known and successful realtor from Mankato, Minnesota, a town more famous for its cornfields and conservative values than for the kind of thrill-seeking that Derek openly craved. Outwardly, Derek was the perfect image of a charismatic, outgoing man who seemed to have it all. His confidence and charm made him a popular figure in his community, and his real estate business was thriving. He was known for his love of adventure and excitement, always the first to suggest a daring activity or exotic vacation. Derek's love for life's thrills, including those of a sexual kind, extended beyond his career and into his personal life, where he sought out experiences that pushed boundaries. This desire for excitement led Derek and his wife Janice to book a trip on an adults-only cruise through the Caribbean in April of 2015. This cruise, marketed as an exotic getaway for couples seeking to spice up their relationships, promised a week of sun, sea, and illicit sex. Derek saw it as the perfect opportunity to explore the more daring side of his sexual interests. Despite his adventurous nature, Derek's life wasn't without its darker sides. Friends described him as someone who could be controlling, particularly in his relationships. This side of Derek had surfaced more often in recent years, straining his marriage to Janice, a quiet and somewhat meek woman. Yet Derek remained determined to revive the spark in their relationship through illicit sexual practices such as swinging and wife swapping, believing that this cruise could be the answer to his marital problems. In the days leading up to their departure, Derek tried to force Janice to go on the cruise with him, in the belief that this trip would bring them closer together. He painted a picture of excitement and intimacy that he hoped would rekindle their romance. But behind his confident exterior, Derek was unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of his marriage. As the cruise approached, Derek's dreams were filled with visions of adventure and passion. He was ready to dive into the experience, never imagining that it would be the last adventure of his life. On the morning of April 14, 2015, at approximately 9:00 a.m., a housekeeper aboard the luxurious cruise ship made a grisly discovery. Her name was Luisa Palacio Ortiz, a 32-year-old woman from San Juan, Puerto Rico, who had been working on the ship for nearly 5 years. As she went about her usual routine, cleaning the cabins while most passengers were at breakfast, she approached cabin 827, the suite assigned to Derek and Janice Orville. When Luisa knocked on the door and received no answer, she assumed the couple had gone out for the day. Using her master key, she entered the room to begin her cleaning. Almost immediately, Luisa noticed something was wrong. The room was eerily quiet, and a strange, heavy smell lingered in the air. As she stepped further into the cabin, Luisa's eyes were drawn to the bed, where she saw Derek Orville's body. He was naked, lying face down on the bed, the mouth gagged and his hands bound to the bedpost with metal chains. A pillow was pressed tightly over his face, and there were no signs of movement. Shocked, Louisa froze for a moment, trying to process what she was seeing. Her heart raced and she felt a wave of nausea. But years of working on the ship had taught her to stay calm in emergencies. Quickly, she backed out screaming of the room and ran down the hallway to the nearest phone. She dialed the ship's emergency number and reported what she had found. Within minutes, ship security arrived at the scene, and the area was cordoned off to prevent any passengers from entering. Louisa, visibly shaken, was taken to a private area where she was given water and comforted by a fellow crew member. She later told investigators that she had never seen anything like this before and hoped never to see it again. The discovery of Derek's body sent shockwaves through the ship. Spicy gossip spread quickly among the passengers, who had been enjoying a sunny day at sea, completely unaware of the dark turn the cruise had taken. Many gathered in small groups, whispering about what had happened, as the ship's crew and authorities prepared to handle the unfolding tragedy. Within an hour of the discovery, the ship's captain, Mark Reynolds, had alerted the local authorities at the nearest port, St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. By 10:30 a.m. on April 14, 2015, a team of detectives from the Virgin Islands Police Department, led by Detective Samuel Torres, boarded the cruise ship. Torres, a seasoned investigator known for his sharp instincts and methodical approach, was accompanied by a forensic specialist and her assistant. The team moved quickly to secure the crime scene, taking every precaution to ensure that no evidence was contaminated. As Torres entered cabin 827, he was struck by the stark contrast between the luxury of the room and the brutal reality of the crime. The cabin, with its plush bedding, elegant furniture, and ocean views, was immaculately clean, too clean. The air was heavy with the scent of cleaning products, which suggested that the scene had been deliberately sanitized. Derek Orgle's naked body lay undisturbed on the bed, still bound with metal chains and gagged with a ball, a pillow pressed tightly against his nose. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, and no obvious fingerprints, indicating that the killer had taken great care in covering their tracks. The medical examiner immediately began her examination of the body, noting the ligature marks on Derek's wrists and ankles. The chains were heavy and industrial-looking, not something typically found on a cruise ship, raising suspicions that they have been brought on board specifically for this possibly sexual purpose. They also observed that Derek's lips were tinged blue, a clear sign of suffocation. The time of death was estimated to be around 2:00 a.m., based on the body's rigidity and temperature. Meanwhile, Torres meticulously searched the room for any additional clues. They used luminol to check for traces of blood, but the tests came back negative, further supporting the theory that the scene had been carefully cleaned. Torres also ordered a sweep of the cabin for any hair, fibers, or other forensic evidence that might have been overlooked. The detectives were puzzled by the lack of any clear evidence pointing to a suspect. Everything about the scene suggested a premeditated, calculated murder by someone who knew Derek's preferences and tendencies. As the investigation continued, the crew and passengers were questioned. Ship logs were reviewed to identify anyone who might have entered or exited the cabin during the night. But the initial search yielded few leads, leaving the detectives with more questions than answers. The team realized they were dealing with a highly skilled and possibly cold-blooded killer. The first person Detective Samuel Torres focused on was Janice Orville, Derek's wife of 20 years. Janice, 45, was a quiet, unassuming librarian from Mankato, Minnesota. She had always been the opposite of her outgoing husband. Where Derek was adventurous and charismatic, Janice was reserved and meek. Her friends described her as a kind but somewhat timid woman who often felt overpowered by Derek's larger-than-life personality. She had spent most of her life supporting Derek's ambitions, including his desire to sexually experiment with this adults-only cruise. When Torres brought Janice in for questioning on the afternoon of April 14, she appeared visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she clutched a tissue. Janice was cooperative, but her demeanor was that of a woman who had been pushed to the brink. As she recounted the events of the previous night, her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. She told Torres that Derek had been excited about the cruise, particularly about exploring their sexual relationship in new ways, something that had always made her uncomfortable. Janice admitted that she had reluctantly agreed to participate in Derek's wife-swapping fantasy, hoping it would satisfy her husband's increasingly kinky sexual needs. But as the days went on, Janice, already off-kilter, having never even seen the ocean in her life, became increasingly uneasy with her husband's sexual arrangements. She described feeling trapped by Derek's insatiable appetite for bizarre sexual situations and disgusted by the situations he practically forced her into. The night before Derek's death, the couple had argued in their cabin. Janice told Torres that Derek had demanded her to have sex with Marina Davis Lockley, one of the other participants in the wife-swapping arrangement, while he watched. Janice had refused, leading to a heated argument. She admitted to feeling both angry and humiliated, but she insisted that she had left the cabin to cool off, spending the night walking around the ship's deck, staring out at the ocean and praying for strength. Torres pressed Janice on the details of the argument, trying to determine if her anger could have driven her to kill Derek. However, Janice remained calm and composed, showing no signs of the rage that might have led to such a brutal murder. Despite her discomfort with the situation, Janice maintained that she would never have harmed Derek, whom she had loved for so many years. The detectives noted her demeanor, but they couldn't ignore the potential motive, a combination of fear, resentment, and desperation that made Janice a key suspect. The second suspect in Derek Orville's murder was Brian Davis, a 47-year-old investment banker from Long Island, New York. Brian was everything Derek admired: successful, confident, and charismatic, with a reputation as a ladies' man. He had been married to Marina Davis Lockley, a serene British yoga instructor, for 10 years, but their relationship was anything but traditional. Ryan and Marina were in an open marriage, a fact they were open about, particularly during this adults-only cruise. Ryan's involvement in the wife-swapping arrangement had started as a thrill-seeking adventure, something he was always up for. Friends described him as a smooth talker who could charm anyone into doing almost anything. On a cruise, Brian quickly bonded with Derek, who shared his enthusiasm for pushing sexual boundaries. The two men seemed to hit it off immediately, and by the third day of the trip, they had agreed to swap wives. But it wasn't just Derek's wife, Janice, who caught Brian's eye. Ryan also became attracted to Derek himself, enjoying the power dynamics that Derek liked to impose, and the two regularly heading to the nearest bathroom to have sex with each other. When Detective Samuel Torres brought Brian in for questioning, Ryan was dressed in a casual polo shirt and khaki shorts, looking more like someone about to hit the golf course than a murder suspect. He was relaxed, almost too relaxed, as he spoke to Torres. Brian admitted that he and Derek had become close and had even become sexual partners. However, he denied any involvement in Derek's death. Brian claimed that the last time he saw Derek was the night before, during a tense encounter where Derek had demanded that Brian and Marina engage in a sexual act with Janice while he watched. Brian, who said he, quote, hates conflict, said the situation had become uncomfortable, and he had left the cabin with Marina, returning to their own room for the night. Torres noticed that Brian's calm demeanor never wavered, even when the questioning became more intense. Brian spoke confidently, his answers quick and to the point. He acknowledged that the wife-swapping experience with Janice and Derek had not been what he expected, admitting that the tension between the couples had escalated as the week went on. However, he insisted that while the situation had grown awkward, he had no reason to kill Derek. Brian's alibi, spending the night with Marina in the cabin, was supported by key card records, but Torres couldn't shake the feeling that Brian was hiding something. The motive was clear: jealousy, desire, and a hunger for control. Ryan's interest in both Derek and Janice, coupled with the possibility of a love triangle turning deadly, made him a prime suspect. But without solid evidence, Torres knew he needed more to connect Brian directly to the murder. The investigation took a significant turn on April 16, 2015, 2 days after Derek Orville's body was discovered. The morning was overcast, with a light drizzle making the deck of the cruise ship slick. Detective Samuel Torres was growing frustrated. Despite the interrogations and a meticulous search of Derek's cabin, the team still hadn't uncovered any decisive evidence pointing to the killer. The crime scene was clean, and the few witnesses were either too intoxicated or too focused on their own affairs to provide useful information. But that morning, new evidence emerged that changed the direction of the investigation. A maintenance worker named Caloy Mendez, who had been cleaning the ship's storage rooms, found a small, nondescript digital camera tucked away behind some cleaning supplies. The camera looked out of place, and its memory card was missing. Caloy, who had heard about the murder on the ship, immediately turned it over to the ship's security team. They, in turn, passed it on to Torres and his team. The camera was a simple handheld model, the kind anyone might carry on vacation. It was slightly scuffed, suggesting it had been hastily discarded. Torres hoped the camera might contain some useful information, so he sent it to the forensic lab on board the ship for analysis. Within a few hours, the technicians had managed to recover several deleted files from the camera's internal memory. What they found was shocking. The recovered footage showed several sexual encounters between the two couples involved in the wife-swapping arrangement, Derek and Janice Orville, and Brian and Marina Davis. The videos, recorded without Janice's knowledge, revealed the increasing tension and discomfort she felt, particularly during the final night of Derek's life. One of the most disturbing clips showed a heated argument between Derek and Janice in their cabin. Derek, visibly angry, was pressuring Janice to participate in a sexual act with Marina while they watched. Janice was seen crying, pleading with Derek to stop, but he refused. The video cut off abruptly, but it was clear that Janice had been pushed to her emotional limit. This new evidence provided a much clearer picture of what might have happened that night. It also gave Torres a better understanding of Janice's state of mind in the hours leading up to the murder. The footage, combined with her earlier testimony, suggested that Janice's fear and desperation had reached a boiling point, possibly leading to Derek's death. Torres now had the motive he needed, but he still needed to confirm if Janice had actually committed the murder. The third suspect in the investigation was Marina Davis Lockley, a 39-year-old yoga instructor from Stoke-on-Trent, England. Marina was known for her calm demeanor and spiritual outlook on life. She had met her husband, Ryan Davis, 10 years earlier while teaching a yoga class in New York City. Despite their different backgrounds, Marina being quiet and introspective, Brian being outgoing and ambitious, the couple seemed to complement each other. Their open marriage, however, was a source of curiosity and sometimes judgment from those who knew them. Marina had initially been reluctant about the wife-swapping arrangement that Brian and Derek had proposed. She wasn't as adventurous as her husband and felt uncomfortable with the idea, but she agreed to it in an effort to keep their marriage strong. As the cruise progressed, Marina found herself increasingly uneasy with the sexual dynamics between the two couples. Derek's dominant behavior, particularly his insistence on controlling the situation, clashed with Marina's desire for peace and balance. She began to distance herself from their wanton sexual activities, often retreating to the ship's yoga classes or spending time alone on the deck, staring out at the endless Caribbean Sea. Detective Samuel Torres brought Marina in for questioning after the disturbing footage from her camera was found. The videos, however, clearly showed Marina's discomfort during the sexual encounters, and Torres wanted to understand her state of mind. Marina appeared calm, but there was an undercurrent of tension in her eyes. Torres began by asking Marina about her relationship with Derek and Janice. Marina admitted that she felt sympathy for Janice, who seemed overwhelmed by Derek's controlling nature. She also expressed regret for agreeing to the wife-swapping arrangement, acknowledging that it had brought nothing but stress and anxiety. She admitted to the videos, saying that she had secretly recorded all their sexual encounters on the cruise for pragmatic reasons only. She told police she was planning to sell the footage to an adult film company as she and Brian were in deep financial trouble. When Torres pressed her about the night of Derek's murder, Marina's calm facade began to crack. She admitted that she had left Derek in Janice's cabin early, unable to bear the situation any longer. However, she denied any involvement in Derek's death. Torres noted that Marina's responses were measured but tinged with a quiet resolve. She seemed genuinely saddened by Derek's death, but also relieved that the ordeal was over. Despite her calm exterior, Torres couldn't help but wonder if Marina's desire to protect Janice had driven her to an extreme action. The possibility that Marina had acted out of a protective instinct, combined with her own discomfort, made her a serious suspect. However, without concrete evidence linking her directly to the crime, Boris knew he would have to dig deeper to find the truth. The breakthrough in the investigation came on April 18, 2015, 4 days after Derek Orville's body was found. Detective Samuel Torres had spent days reviewing the footage recovered from the hidden camera, piecing together the events leading up to Derek's murder. The evidence pointed to only one person who had the motive, opportunity, and means to carry out the crime: Janice Orville, Derek's wife. Janice, a 45-year-old librarian from Mankato, Minnesota, had been a quiet, supportive partner throughout their 20-year marriage. But the cruise had exposed the deep cracks in their relationship. Derek's domineering behavior and insistence on pushing Janice into increasingly uncomfortable sexual situations had taken a toll on her. The footage from the camera revealed Janice's growing distress, particularly during the final night of Derek's life. The video showed Derek demanding that Janice participate in a sexual act with Marina Davis while he watched, bound and gagged. Janice's tearful pleas for Derek to stop went unanswered, and the video cut off just as tensions reached a boiling point. Torres was convinced that Janice had snapped under the pressure, leading her to suffocate Derek with a pillow while he was helpless. On the morning of April 18th, Torres, along with 2 other officers, went to confront Janice in her cabin. The sun was just rising, casting a soft glow over the ship as it continued its journey through the Caribbean. Janice opened the door, her face pale and eyes red from days of sleeplessness. She knew why they were there. Torres informed Janice that she was under arrest for the murder of her husband. Janice didn't resist. Instead, she simply nodded, her hands trembling as she was handcuffed. She seemed resigned to her fate, as if the weight of the past week had finally crushed her spirit. As she was led away, other passengers watched in shocked silence, the reality of the situation sinking in. Back in Mankato, news of Janice's arrest spread quickly. The small town, where Derek had been a well-known realtor, was stunned. Friends and family struggled to reconcile the image of the quiet, unassuming librarian with the shocking crime she was accused of committing. Derek's parents were devastated. They had always seen Janice as the perfect wife for their son, and now they were grappling with the horror that she had taken his life. The arrest marked the beginning of a long legal process, but for Torres, it was the culmination of a tense and emotionally charged investigation. He had seen the toll the situation had taken on everyone involved. And while Janice's arrest brought some closure, it also left many questions about the true nature of the relationship between Derek and Janice, and how it had all gone so terribly wrong. Janice Orville's trial began on October 12, 2015, in Miami-Dade County Court. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and the families of both Derek and Janice, all eager to see justice served. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Maria Paulina Sanchez, 38, was determined to paint Janice as a cold-blooded killer. Sanchez, known for her no-nonsense approach and sharp cross-examinations, argued that Janice had meticulously planned Derek's murder as a way to escape their failing marriage. She presented the hidden camera footage as key evidence, highlighting Janice's growing distress and the final confrontation on the night of the murder. Sanchez asserted that Janice had deliberately suffocated Derek, using the pillow as the murder weapon, in a premeditated act of violence. The defense, led by public defender Ellen Goldstein, 52, painted a very different picture. Goldstein, a seasoned attorney known for his empathetic style, argued that Janice had acted in self-defense after years of psychological abuse. He described Derek as a controlling and manipulative husband who had forced Janice into humiliating situations. Goldstein claimed that Janice's actions were the result of a mental breakdown brought on by the extreme stress of the cruise and Derek's relentless pressure. Throughout the trial, Janice remained stoic, her eyes often downcast as she listened to the testimony. The Orville family sat in the front row, their grief palpable. Derek's mother, Linda Orville, broke down in tears several times, unable to comprehend how the woman she once considered a daughter could have killed her son. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning with a verdict. On October 27, 2015, Janice Orville was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought some closure to Derek's family, but it also left them with a deep sense of loss. They felt the sentence was too lenient, given the brutal nature of Derek's death. Janice's family, on the other hand, expressed relief that she had not been sentenced to life in prison, though they were devastated by the outcome. The trial had been a painful experience for everyone involved, leaving scars that would take years to heal. After the trial, the lives of everyone involved were irrevocably changed. Janice Orville began serving her 50-year sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution, a women's prison in Ocala, Florida. Life behind bars was a harsh adjustment for Janice, who had spent most of her life in the quiet comfort of her Minnesota home. The once mousy librarian now faced a daily reality filled with strict routines, overcrowded cells, and limited contact with the outside world. She kept mostly to herself, spending her days reading and occasionally teaching other inmates how to read and write. Back in Mankato, Derek Orville's family struggled to move forward. His parents, Robert and Linda, were consumed by grief, unable to accept the loss of their only son. The house that once echoed with Derek's lively presence now felt unbearably empty. Robert, who had always been proud of Derek's achievements, became a shell of his former self, rarely leaving the house. Linda sought solace in her church community, finding comfort in prayer and the support of fellow parishioners, but the pain of losing Derek remained a constant companion. Ryan Davis and Marina Davis Lockley, the other couple involved in the wife-swapping arrangement, returned to Long Island after the trial. The scandal had destroyed their reputation and left their marriage in tatters. Brian, once a successful investment banker, lost his job after the company learned about the trial and the secret recordings he had made. Marina, who had been a respected yoga instructor, found it impossible to continue teaching, as her clients abandoned her in the wake of the scandal. The couple eventually divorced, each trying to rebuild their lives separately. For the community of Mankato, the case served as a harsh reminder of how quickly life can change. The trial and its aftermath were the talk of the town for months, as people struggled to reconcile the Janice they knew with the woman convicted of such a horrific crime. Willie Tanner, 49, was a well-known and respected figure in the small southern town of Tifton, Georgia. He owned Tanner's Hardware, a local store that had been serving the community for over 2 decades. Known for its friendly service and wide selection of tools and supplies, Tanner's Hardware was the kind of place where neighbors could count on finding what they needed, whether it was a simple screwdriver or advice on how to fix a leaky faucet. Willie was often seen behind the counter, greeting customers with a warm smile and chatting about everything from the weather to last night's episode of Jeopardy! Willie's life appeared ideal to those who knew him. He was married to Lynn Tanner, 48, his high school sweetheart, and the couple was often involved in local church activities and charity events. They lived in a modest but well-kept home, decorated for the holidays with twinkling lights and a wreath on the front door. However, beneath this seemingly perfect exterior, Willie was hiding a dark secret. Despite his reputation as a devoted husband and upstanding citizen, Willie had become involved in a secret affair with Madison Kelly, an 18-year-old high school senior. Madison, known for her striking looks and intelligence, was a regular customer at the hardware store. Over time, a friendship developed that quickly turned into a sexual relationship. Torn between guilt and desire, Willie struggled with his conscience as the holiday season approached. He knew the affair was wrong, but he was unable to break free from the emotional entanglement that had developed. The relationship was torrid and extremely intense, with Willie struggling between his guilt and his growing attachment to Madison. In the days leading up to his death, Willie had been distant and distracted, trying to maintain the facade of a loving husband while battling his inner turmoil. As Christmas approached in December 2019, Willie's behavior began to change. He became more distant, spending less time at home, and more time working late. Lynn noticed the change but attributed it to the stress of running the business during the busy holiday season. Friends and neighbors also noticed that Willie seemed preoccupied, no longer as cheerful as he once was. But no one could have imagined the storm brewing beneath the surface, a storm that would soon shatter the peace of their small town. It was the morning of December 22, 2019, just a few days before Christmas. Tifton, Georgia was quiet, with most of the town's residents finishing their holiday shopping or decorating their homes. Around 9:00 a.m., Lynn Tanner, Willie's wife, was returning home from her Sunday morning church service at First Baptist Church, where she had volunteered to help prepare for the upcoming Christmas Eve service. She noticed Willie's truck parked in the driveway, which struck her as odd since he had mentioned needing to pick up some last-minute supplies for the store. When Lynn entered their home on Bride Street, the first thing she noticed was the smell of fresh pine from the Christmas tree they had decorated together. The tree was still lit with colorful lights, and underneath it were neatly wrapped presents, some with her name on them. But something was off. The house was eerily silent, and Willie didn't respond when she called out his name. As Lynn walked into the living room, she was met with a sight that would haunt her forever. Willie's lifeless body lay on the floor near the Christmas tree, surrounded by shattered ornaments and tinsel. His head was soaked in blood, as if it were an enchilada, and a hammer lay nearby, covered in what she could only assume was her husband's blood. Lynn dropped to her knees, her body shaking as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Panic set in, but Lynn forced herself to stay calm enough to call 911. Her voice trembled as she explained the situation to the operator, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my lordy, my husband's not breathing. There's blood everywhere," she cried. The operator tried to keep her calm, instructing her not to touch anything and to wait outside for the police and paramedics. Within minutes, the quiet street was filled with the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, whispering to each other and speculating about what had happened. Lynn sat on the front porch, numb and in shock, unable to comprehend how her life had changed in an instant. The Tifton Police Department arrived on the scene within minutes of Lynn Tanner's 911 call. Leading the investigation was Detective Nora Collins, a seasoned officer with over 15 years of experience. Known for her sharp instincts and methodical approach, Detective Collins was respected by her peers and feared by criminals. As she stepped out of her unmarked cruiser, she was immediately struck by the contrast between the festive decorations on the Tanner's home and the grim scene awaiting her inside. The living room was a disturbing mix of holiday cheer and brutal violence. Christmas lights twinkled on the tree, reflecting off the shattered ornaments scattered across the floor. Willie Tanner's body lay near the base of the tree, his head caved in, like a half-eaten burrito, from what appeared to be multiple blows with a hammer. Blood had spattered across the nearby gifts, soaking the wrapping paper and ribbons. Detective Collins took in the scene, her mind racing as she began to piece together what might have happened. The hammer, still lying beside Willie's body, was immediately bagged as evidence. The crime scene was bloody, but it was also oddly confined. There were no signs of a struggle beyond the immediate area around the tray. It was as if Willie had been caught completely off guard. The forensic team arrived shortly after, led by Dr. Philip K. Wang, a meticulous and detail-oriented medical examiner who was known for his precise work. Dr. Wang began examining Willie's body, noting the severe head trauma that had likely caused instant death. He estimated the time of death to be between 10 o'clock p.m. and midnight the previous evening, based on the state of rigor mortis. Detective Collins directed her team to collect every possible piece of evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, took photographs, and searched for any other clues that might point to the killer. She also interviewed Lynn Tanner, who was still in shock but managed to provide a basic timeline of her morning and Willie's activities the previous day. As the investigation unfolded, Detective Collins couldn't shake the feeling that this was a crime of passion. The brutality of the attack suggested deep anger or jealousy, emotions that often fueled such violent outbursts. But who could have hated Willie Tanner enough to kill him in such a brutal way? That was the question Collins was determined to answer. The first person Detective Nora Collins decided to investigate was Madison Kelly, the 18-year-old high school senior who had also been the secret lover of Willie Tanner. Madison was known around Tifton as a bright student with a promising future. She was involved in several extracurricular activities, including the school's drama club, where she had recently wowed audiences as Tiny Tim in a local production of A Christmas Carol. But beneath her polished exterior, Madison was emotionally fragile, a trait that had become more apparent in recent months. Madison lived with her mother, Tammy Kelly, in a small but tidy house on the outskirts of town. The Kellys were known for keeping to themselves, and Tammy was known in the community for being controlling and obsessed with her daughter's appearance, especially her husband. Madison's father had left the family after coming out as gay. When Detective Collins arrived at the Kelly residence on the afternoon of December 22, she found Madison, still dressed in her jammies, in her bedroom, visibly shaken by the news of Willie's death. The room was a typical teenager's sanctuary, filled with posters of pop stars like Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande, but there were also signs of Madison's obsession with Willie. Detective Collins noticed a framed shirtless photo of Willie on Madison's nightstand, and her journals were filled with graphic entries about their sexual relationship. During the interview, Madison was initially cooperative but quickly became emotional when questioned about her relationship with Willie. She admitted to the affair, describing how they had grown close over the past year. Madison revealed that she had fallen deeply in love with Willie and had even fantasized about a future together. However, as Christmas approached, Willie had become distant, and she feared he was planning to end their relationship. When Detective Collins pressed Madison on her whereabouts the night of the murder, Madison hesitated before claiming she had been home alone, studying for her final exams. Her alibi was weak, and her emotional state raised red flags for Collins. Madison's tears and trembling hands indicated that she was under immense stress, but whether it was from guilt or grief was unclear. As the interview continued, Madison's demeanor shifted from sorrowful to defensive. She insisted she had nothing to do with Willie's death and began to speak erratically, blaming a mysterious man she called Bob for influencing her actions. Madison claimed that Bob had convinced her to pursue a sexual relationship with Willie or else he would torture her, but when pressed for more details, she became evasive and confused. Detective Collins was unconvinced by Madison's story. The combination of her emotional instability, obsession with Willie, and weak alibi made her a prime suspect. However, Collins knew she needed more concrete evidence before she could make an arrest. The investigation into Madison Kelly was far from over, and Collins was determined to uncover the truth behind Willie Tanner's tragic death. The second person on Detective Nora Collins' list was Lynn Tanner, Willie's wife of 25 years. Lynn was a well-known figure in Tifton, recognized for her deep involvement in the community and church activities. She was a warm and friendly woman, always greeting neighbors with a smile and often hosting gatherings at their home. Despite the outward appearance of a happy marriage, Detective Collins knew that Lynn had long harbored suspicions about Willie's fidelity. Lynn had spent the days leading up to the murder preparing for Christmas. She had been busy with church events, including the upcoming Christmas Eve service at First Baptist Church. To the outside world, it seemed like Lynn was focused on her faith and family, but inside, she was troubled by a growing sense of unease. She had noticed Willie's increasing absences, which he often explained away as work-related or part of his commitment to the church. However, Lynn couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When Detective Collins interviewed Lynn on December 22, Lynn was still in shock from discovering her husband's body that morning. Sitting at the kitchen table, Lynn recounted her marriage to Willie, describing him as a loving husband, but also admitting that they had grown distant and sexless in recent years, especially after their son Rifle left for college. She confessed that she had suspected Willie of having an affair after he kept turning down her requests for sex, but had no proof. Lynn's eyes welled up with tears as she spoke about the strain it had put on their relationship, particularly in the last few months. Detective Collins asked Lynn about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Lynn stated that she had been at home, preparing for the next day's church service. She had gone to bed early, assuming Willie would join her later, but when she woke up in the middle of the night and realized he wasn't there, she assumed he had fallen asleep in the living room. It wasn't until the next morning that she discovered the gruesome truth. Lynn's account of the evening was straightforward, but Detective Collins couldn't ignore the possibility that Lynn's suspicions about Willie's affair could have driven her to commit the murder. The brutal nature of the crime suggested a deeply personal motive, and as the wife of the victim, Lynn had both the opportunity and a potential reason to kill. However, Lynn's grief appeared genuine, and her cooperation with the investigation was unwavering. She answered all of Collins' questions without hesitation and even provided access to Willie's personal belongings, including his phone and computer. Still, Collins knew that emotions could be powerful motivators, and she wasn't ready to rule Lynn out as a suspect just yet. The investigation continued, with Collins keeping a close eye on every detail of Lynn's story. The third person Detective Nora Collins needed to investigate was Tammy Kelly, the mother of Madison Kelly, and a woman with a strong-willed, controlling personality. Tammy was known around Tifton as a perfectionist, always concerned with appearances and maintaining a strict household, especially after her husband left her after coming out of the closet. She was active in the community, often organizing events at the local church, but her primary focus was on her daughter, Madison. Tammy's relationship with Madison had always been strained. Madison, who was young, beautiful, and full of sexual potential, had been the subject of Tammy's obsessive fear and attention. Tammy's control over Madison extended to every aspect of her life, from the clothes she wore to her social interactions. It was well known among their neighbors that Tammy had high expectations for her daughter and was often harsh when those expectations weren't met. Rumors had circulated that Tammy disciplined Madison severely, with one particularly disturbing story claiming that Tammy whipped Madison whenever she thought her daughter's appearance was too attractive to men in the community. Detective Collins approached Tammy on December 23, the day after Willie Tanner's body was found. Tammy was at home, seemingly unfazed by the events of the past day. She welcomed Collins into her clean living room, decorated with traditional Christmas decorations, including a perfectly trimmed tree and a nativity scene. Tammy was calm and composed as she spoke, but there was an underlying tension in her demeanor. Collins began the interview by asking Tammy about her relationship with Willie. Tammy was quick to praise Willie, describing him distantly as a good man and a pillar of the community. However, as the conversation shifted to Madison, Tammy's tone became more guarded. She admitted that she had been angered about Madison's recent behavior, noting that her daughter had begun wearing makeup and a bra in the weeks leading up to the murder. When Collins pressed Tammy about whether she knew of Madison's sexual relationship with Willie, which was exactly what she was trying to prevent. Tammy's composure faltered slightly. She denied any knowledge of the affair, but admitted that she had noticed Madison had begun to dress like a harlot, in Tammy's words. Tammy claimed that she had tried to talk to Madison about it, but her daughter had brushed her off, insisting everything was fine. Collins couldn't ignore the possibility that Tammy's jealousy and need for control could have driven her to commit the murder. Tammy's intense need for control of her daughter, combined with the potential scandal of Madison's sexual affair with a much older man, her worst nightmare, gave her a possible motive. However, Tammy remained cool and collected throughout the interview, showing no signs of guilt or remorse. She was polite and cooperative, but offered little useful information. As Collins left the Kelly home, she knew Tammy couldn't be dismissed as a suspect. The investigation was growing more complex, with each suspect revealing new layers of potential motives and secrets. But without hard evidence, Collins was still piecing together the puzzle. On December 24, 2019, just one day before Christmas, the investigation took a significant turn. It was a cold, gray morning in Tifton, Georgia, with temperatures hovering around the low 40s. Detective Nora Collins and her team were back at the Tanner's residence, meticulously combing through every inch of the crime scene, determined to find any clue they might have missed. As the team searched the house, one officer noticed something odd near the fireplace. Amidst the neatly wrapped Christmas presents, he found a small, torn piece of paper partially tucked under the rug. The paper appeared to be a handwritten note, but only a fragment was legible. It read, "Dirty boy, meet me at," followed by a time, 10:00 p.m., and the initials MK. This discovery immediately caught Detective Collins' attention. The initials MK seemed to match those of Madison Kelly, Willie's secret lover. The time mentioned in the note also coincided with the estimated time of Willie's death. Collins realized that this could be the key piece of evidence that linked Madison directly to the crime scene on the night of the murder. Collins quickly ordered a forensic analysis of the note, hoping to determine if the handwriting matched Madison's. The note was sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta for further examination. Meanwhile, Collins decided to revisit Madison's home to search for anything that might tie her to the note or the crime. While at the Kelly residence, Collins and her team found a notebook in Madison's bedroom, hidden under her mattress. The notebook was filled with disturbing entries about her obsession with Willie, including plans to meet him in secret. One of the entries, dated December 22, matched the time and place mentioned in the torn note found at the Tanner's house. This new evidence was crucial. It not only placed Madison at the scene of the crime, but also provided a motive driven by jealousy and obsession. Collins felt that the case was beginning to come together, with the puzzle pieces finally falling into place. Back at the station, the forensic analysis confirmed that the handwriting on the note matched Madison's. This was the break Collins had been waiting for. With this new evidence, the focus of the investigation narrowed sharply on Madison Kelly, making her the prime suspect in Willie Tanner's murder. As the investigation progressed, all signs began pointing toward Madison Kelly, Willie's 18-year-old secret lover. The small town of Tifton, Georgia, was already reeling from the news of Willie's brutal murder, but what emerged from the investigation shocked everyone even more. Madison's obsessive love for Willie had been building for months. As the holiday season approached, her fear of being abandoned grew stronger. She was terrified that Willie, a man more than twice her age, would leave her behind to focus on his family during Christmas. The thought of losing him consumed her, driving her into a jealous rage. On the night of December 21, 2019, Madison decided to confront Willie at his home. Desperate for reassurance that he still loved her, she did something drastic. She took off all her clothes and begged him to have sex with her right then and there in the middle of the living room. Willie, already feeling the pressure of his double life and fearing that his wife would find out, panicked. He tried to end the relationship, fearing exposure and the consequences it would bring to both their lives. But this only pushed Madison over the edge. In a moment of uncontrollable fury, Madison snapped. In a moment of uncontrollable fury, she grabbed a hammer that Willie had planned to use for hanging Christmas lights and beat him to death with it. The scene was gruesome, with the festive decorations in the living room contrasting sharply with the violence of the crime. After the murder, Madison knew she was in deep trouble. In a desperate attempt to avoid punishment, she concocted a bizarre story. She feigned having early onset schizophrenia, claiming that a secret lover named Bob had been manipulating her for years. According to her elaborate tale, Bob was a high-ranking politician involved in wild sex rituals and secret satanic and Wiccan practices. Madison insisted that Bob had forced her into a life of sin and ultimately commanded her to kill Willie. The police, however, were unimpressed by her story. Detective Nora Collins, who had been leading the investigation, saw through the lies. Despite Madison's attempts to shift the blame, the evidence was clear. The handwriting on the note found at the crime scene matched Madison's, and her obsessive entries in her notebook painted a picture of a young woman consumed by jealousy and rage. When confronted with the evidence, Madison tried to change her story. She claimed that Bob was merely a voice in her head, that she was mentally ill, and that she hadn't been in control of her actions. But the police didn't buy it. They believed she was lying to cover up her crime. On December 26, 2019, Madison Kelly was officially arrested for the murder of Willie Tanner. She was taken into custody without incident, her demeanor eerily calm as she was led away in handcuffs. The town of Tifton was left in shock, struggling to comprehend how a young woman with such a bright future could commit such a heinous act. Willie's family, devastated by the loss, found some solace in the fact that the person responsible for his death was finally behind bars. But the pain of his absence, especially during the holiday season, was something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. The trial of Madison Kelly began in early February 2020. The small town of Tifton, Georgia, was gripped by the case, with many locals following every detail closely. The courtroom was packed as the prosecution and defense presented their cases. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Robert Whitman, a seasoned attorney known for his no-nonsense approach, argued that Madison's crime was premeditated. Whitman, 52, described how Madison's obsession with Willie Tanner had reached a dangerous level, leading her to commit a brutal murder when he tried to end their affair. He emphasized the cold, calculated nature of the crime, pointing to the evidence that Madison had brought the hammer with her, fully intending to use it. Whitman also dismissed Madison's claims of mental illness, calling it a desperate attempt to escape justice. On the other side, the defense attorney, Karen Blackwell, 45, who was known for her compassionate yet sharp legal mind, argued that Madison was mentally unstable at the time of the murder. Blackwell claimed that Madison had suffered from a psychotic break, driven by the fear of losing Willie and the intense pressure of their secret relationship. She asked the jury to consider Madison's troubled home life and the influence it had on her mental state. Blackwell painted a picture of a vulnerable young woman who had been manipulated by an older man and who had finally snapped under the pressure. Throughout the trial, Willie's family sat in the front row, their faces etched with grief. They listened quietly as the details of Willie's double life were laid bare for the world to see. The pain of his betrayal was clear, but so was their deep sorrow at his loss. After several days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. On February 18, 2020, Madison Kelly was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The sentence brought mixed reactions. Some felt it was too lenient given the brutality of the crime, while others believed it was a fair acknowledgement of Madison's youth and troubled mental state. Willie's family expressed relief that the trial was over, but knew that the scars of this tragedy would remain with them forever. After the trial concluded, life in Tifton, Georgia, slowly began to return to normal, though the memory of the crime lingered. Willie Tanner's hardware store, once a bustling hub in the community, closed its doors for good. Without Willie to run it, his family decided they couldn't keep the business going. The closure marked the end of an era for the small town, leaving a hole in the community that was difficult to fill. Madison Kelly was transferred to a state prison, where she began serving her 25-year sentence. Despite her attempts to feign mental illness during the trial, the prison's psychiatric evaluations found no evidence of schizophrenia or any other condition that would have explained her actions. Madison spent her days in relative isolation, with few visitors. Her once promising future was now a distant memory, replaced by the reality of a life behind bars. Lynn Tanner, Willie's widow, struggled to cope with the revelations about her husband's double life. The knowledge that Willie had been unfaithful with an 18-year-old girl was a heavy burden to bear. Despite the support of her church community, Lynn withdrew from public life, choosing to grieve in private. She eventually sold the family home and moved to a nearby town, hoping for a fresh start away from the memories that haunted her. Tammy Kelly, Madison's mother, faced her own challenges after the trial. The scandal had brought shame upon her family, and Tammy's once ironclad grip on her daughter's life had shattered. Tammy became a pariah in the community, with many blaming her controlling nature for Madison's downfall. She too retreated from public view, avoiding the judgmental stares of her neighbors. For the residents of Tifton, the events of December 2019 served as a stark reminder that even in a close-knit community, secrets can fester and lead to tragedy. The town's Christmas celebrations that year were muted as the memory of Willie Tanner's murder cast a long shadow over the holiday season. It would take years for the community to heal, and even then, the story of Madison Kelly and Willie Tanner's would be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in Tifton's history. Joel Donovan, 29, was a Boston native who worked as a successful software engineer at a small tech company in the city. He grew up in a lower middle-class family and had always been known for his intelligence and problem-solving skills. After attending Northeastern University, where he earned a degree in computer science and a reputation as a prodigy, Joel quickly found success in his career. His laid-back personality, dry sense of humor, and sharp mind made him well-liked by his friends and colleagues. In his personal life, Joel was deeply in love with his fiancée, Rebecca Abernathy, 27. The two had met through mutual friends in Boston, and their relationship had grown quickly. Friends described Joel as being smitten with Rebecca, who was outgoing and full of energy, a stark contrast to his more reserved nature. Despite their differences, they seemed to complement each other well. Rebecca had also developed a close friendship with Joel's mother, Patricia Donovan. The two went and bonded over their shared interest and spent a lot of time together. Joel's love for Rebecca was evident to everyone around him, and he believed they were a perfect match. They had planned a beautiful wedding to take place at a ranch near Moren, Arizona, in late February 2020, choosing the venue for its scenic views and rustic charm. However, in the weeks leading up to the wedding, Joel began to notice Rebecca's odd behavior. She seemed distant and distracted, often disappearing for hours at a time without explanation. This led to growing suspicion in Joel's mind. Still, he tried to push these thoughts aside, hoping that it was just pre-wedding stress. The day before the wedding, Joel spent time with his best man and close friend, Patrick Walsh, and they talked about their futures. Joel shared how excited he was to marry Rebecca and to start the next chapter of his life. He had plans to move to a bigger house and maybe even start a family soon. But those dreams were cut tragically short just one day later. On the afternoon of February 22, 2020, what was supposed to be a joyful wedding day took a horrific turn. It was around 4:30 p.m. when Joel Donovan's body was discovered at a picturesque ranch near Moren, Arizona. The ranch, a popular wedding venue known for its sprawling desert views and rustic barns, had been transformed for Joel and Rebecca's wedding. But instead of celebrating, guests were left shocked and horrified by what unfolded. Joel was found by his best man and close friend, Patrick Walsh. After hearing a commotion following Joel's shocking accusation that his new wife was a cheater during his wedding speech, Patrick rushed to check on his friend. He found Joel lying on the floor near the reception area, covered in blood. Joel had been stabbed multiple times in the chest. The knife, which had been used to cut the wedding cake earlier in the evening, lay nearby, stained with blood. Patrick was in disbelief. He had known Joel for most of his life and never imagined something like this could happen on what should have been one of the happiest days of his lives. His initial reaction was panic. Shaking, he called 911 and tried to explain what he had found. His voice was shaky as he told the dispatcher that Joel had been stabbed and was unresponsive. Several wedding guests had also seen the aftermath and were screaming in terror, adding to the chaos. Within minutes, the venue turned into a scene of confusion. Guests were ushered away from the crime scene, many of them still in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Some guests, who had been enjoying the open bar and taking pictures with their smartphones, found themselves documenting a murder scene instead. Photos and videos taken earlier in the day quickly spread on social media, with many people sharing their disbelief at how quickly the celebration turned into tragedy. Patrick tried to administer first aid, but quickly realized there was nothing more he could do. Joel was already gone by the time paramedics arrived. It was a gruesome sight. Blood pooled on the floor, Joel's tuxedo soaked red, and his eyes wide open in shock. The paramedics officially pronounced Joel dead on the scene, and the entire venue was put on lockdown while local authorities arrived to begin their investigation. Police arrived at the ranch near Marina, Arizona, at approximately 5:00 p.m. on February 22, 2020, just minutes after receiving Patrick Walsh's 911 call. Leading the investigation was Detective Martina Morales, a seasoned investigator with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Known for her calm demeanor and sharp instincts, Morales immediately took charge of the chaotic situation. As the sun began to set over the desert, the ranch's picturesque setting clashed with the grim scene inside the reception area. Blood was splattered across the wooden floor where Joel Donovan's body lay, his tuxedo soaked in red. The wedding cake, which had been beautifully decorated with desert flowers, stood nearby, its knife now a murder weapon. Guests had been ushered outside by staff, some still wearing their formal attire, visibly shaken by the horrific events. Detective Morales and her team immediately began surveying the area, carefully marking off sections of the reception hall with yellow crime scene tape. They started by photographing the scene and collecting potential evidence. The murder weapon, the cake knife, was the first piece of evidence collected. Morales noted that it appeared to have been wiped hastily, likely in a panic by the attacker, but blood traces were still clearly visible on the blade. Joel had been stabbed multiple times in the chest, each wound deep and precise. Based on the angle of the stab wounds, the detectives believed the attacker had been standing close to him, possibly face to face. Blood spatter analysis was done to determine the sequence of events, with experts using luminal spray to check for any hidden bloodstains that might have been missed by the naked eye. Morales quickly interviewed the guests, many of whom were still in shock, their wedding clothes rumpled and their faces pale. Everyone described hearing Joel's shocking accusation during his wedding speech. "My wife is a cheater," followed by a loud commotion. Some guests reported seeing a masked intruder rushing through the crowd moments after Joel collapsed. However, no one could give a clear description of the attacker. Security footage from the venue was immediately retrieved, and officers began reviewing it on site. Morales hoped that it would reveal more about the mysterious masked intruder, but the video quality was poor, making it difficult to identify anyone clearly. With the scene secured and evidence collected, Morales knew this would be a long and complex case. The investigation was just beginning. The first suspect the police turned their attention to was Rebecca Abernethy Donovan, the 27-year-old bride and Joel Donovan's new wife. In the hours following the murder, Rebecca was taken to the Pima County Sheriff's Office for questioning. Still wearing her white wedding dress, now stained with blood, Rebecca appeared dazed and in shock. She was a marketing executive from Boston, known for her outgoing personality and her tendency to enjoy the spotlight, a sharp contrast to her husband's more reserved nature. Detective Morales led the interrogation. Her goal was to determine whether Rebecca had any involvement in Joel's murder. From the start, Rebecca was emotional, her voice trembling as she recounted the events of the day. She described her marriage to Joel as mostly happy, though she admitted they had experienced difficulties leading up to the wedding, she said tearfully. Rebecca's emotions fluctuated wildly during the interview, swinging between sobbing and stunned silence. When Morales brought up Joel's shocking accusation, his claim that Rebecca had been unfaithful, Rebecca's face went pale. She initially denied everything, claiming she had no idea what Joel was talking about. However, the police were already aware of Joel's suspicions about Rebecca's affair. They had learned from friends and family that Joel had grown distant and paranoid in the weeks before the wedding, convinced that Rebecca was hiding something. Under further questioning, Rebecca's calm began to crack. Her responses became evasive, and she grew defensive when pressed about the affair. Morales noted that Rebecca's emotions seemed exaggerated at times, raising suspicions about whether she was hiding something. However, despite her suspicious behavior, Rebecca denied any involvement in Joel's murder. She insisted that she had been frozen in shock when Joel was attacked and had no idea who the masked intruder was. Rebecca's secret affair, it turned out, wasn't just with anyone. It was with another woman. The revelation of this affair added a complicated twist to the case. Joel had apparently caught Rebecca sending sexually explicit texts just hours before the ceremony, and his accusation during the wedding speech had been his way of exposing her. Although Rebecca's affair was a clear motive for tension between her and Joel, there was no direct evidence linking her to the murder. She was released after several hours of questioning, but remained under close surveillance as the investigation continued. The investigation took a dramatic turn on the morning of February 23, 2020, the day after Joel Donovan's murder. The weather was clear and crisp, with temperatures hovering in the mid-60s, typical for the Arizona desert in late winter. While the police had been initially stumped by the masked intruder's identity, new evidence emerged that added a shocking layer to the case. Around 10:00 a.m., Detective Morales received a call from one of the wedding venue's cleaning staff. The worker had been tidying up the honeymoon suite when she discovered something unusual, a pair of torn women's undergarments beneath the bed, along with a half-empty bottle of champagne. The discovery prompted Morales to order a full sweep of the suite. What they found next would change the course of the investigation. In the bed, they found traces of bodily fluids, confirming that a sexual act had taken place just hours before the wedding. DNA testing later revealed that both Rebecca Abernethy Donovan and Joel's own mother, Patricia Donovan, had been having sex in the bed together. This was the breakthrough the police needed. It turned out that moments before the wedding ceremony, Joel had walked in on Rebecca and Patricia having sex in the honeymoon suite. Overcome with shock and rage, Joel left the suite without confronting them, deciding instead to make a public spectacle at the wedding. It was this moment of heartbreak and fury that led to Joel's explosive declaration during his wedding speech. "My wife is a cheater." He had been planning to expose both his mother and his bride in front of all the guests. According to interviews with friends and family, Joel had been suspicious of Rebecca's behavior for weeks, but had never expected to catch her in such a betrayal with his own mother. Detective Morales now had a clearer understanding of the motive behind Joel's outburst, as well as a better picture of the emotional state of both Rebecca and Patricia at the time of the murder. The affair was a secret that neither woman wanted to come to light, and Joel's exposure of their relationship had shattered the facade they built. With this new evidence, Morales shifted her focus back to Rebecca and Patricia. The wedding day betrayal had set the stage for the murder, and it was becoming clear that the motive was deeply personal. Now, Morales needed to determine whether it was Rebecca, Patricia, or someone else who had taken the ultimate step to silence Joel forever. After uncovering the shocking affair between Rebecca Abernethy Donovan and Patricia Donovan, the police turned their attention to Joel's mother, Patricia, as the second key suspect. At 61 years old, Patricia was a well-known figure in her small town outside Boston, where she owned a popular diner, Donovan's Diner, which had been featured in a 2018 Boston Globe article for its classic comfort food. Despite her public reputation as a hardworking businesswoman and a devoted single mother, Patricia had a secret life that few knew about. For nearly 4 months, Patricia had been involved in a sexual affair with Rebecca, her son's fiancée. The affair had started innocently enough, with Rebecca confiding in Patricia about her cold feet as the wedding approached. But what began as emotional support quickly turned into something more. Patricia had developed intense sexual feelings for Rebecca and had grown possessive of her, desperate to keep their relationship hidden from Joel and the rest of their family. When Joel discovered them having sex in the honeymoon suite hours before the ceremony, Patricia knew everything was about to unravel. After Joel's public accusation at the wedding, Patricia had remained silent, trying to keep her composure as her son exposed her darkest secret. Her facade cracked when Joel was murdered in front of all the guests, stabbed by a masked intruder. Patricia became a prime suspect, as her emotional connection to Rebecca and the humiliation she faced gave her a strong motive to silence Joel. Detective Morales interrogated Patricia for several hours at the Pima County Sheriff's Office. During the questioning, Patricia appeared calm but deeply emotional, often pausing to wipe away tears. She admitted to the affair with Rebecca, but vehemently denied any involvement in her son's murder. However, the detectives noted inconsistencies in her story. Patricia claimed to have been in shock during the attack, yet several wedding guests reported seeing her leaving the area before Joel was stabbed. Despite her denials, Patricia's behavior during the interrogation raised red flags. Her emotional state shifted rapidly, from sorrow to anger, as Morales pressed her on the details of the affair and its aftermath. Although Patricia continued to deny any involvement in the murder, her possessiveness over Rebecca and the shame of being publicly exposed made her a compelling suspect. However, without direct evidence linking her to the attack, the police couldn't yet make an arrest. For now, Patricia remained the suspect, her secrets threatening to destroy everything she had worked so hard to protect. The third suspect the police focused on was Patrick Daniel Walsh, Joel Donovan's best man and lifelong friend. Patrick, 29, was a middle school teacher back in Boston. Known for his outgoing personality and laid-back attitude, he was a fixture in Joel's life since they were kids. They'd grown up together, attended college at the same time, and shared a close bond. Patrick had always been seen as a bit of a womanizer, often dating multiple women at once, but no one ever expected him to be tied to such a brutal crime. At the wedding, Patrick had stood just a few feet away from Joel during the shocking outburst where Joel accused Rebecca of cheating. Patrick had been one of the first people to rush to Joel's side after the stabbing, shouting for someone to call 911. Despite his apparent distress, the police couldn't overlook the fact that Patrick had been very close to both Joel and Rebecca in the months leading up to the wedding, and there were rumors he knew about an affair long before the ceremony. It was later revealed that Patrick had actually discovered Rebecca's affair with Patricia Donovan weeks before the wedding, but had kept it quiet. According to testimony from other family friends, Patrick had seen Rebecca sneaking around with Patricia during wedding planning trips but chose not to tell Joel. The reason? Patrick had been secretly sexually involved with Rebecca too. Their brief fling had started after a late-night conversation over drinks during one of those wedding planning weekends. Patrick had hoped it would continue, but Rebecca had ended it quickly, telling him she was committed to marrying Joel. Detectives questioned Patrick in the days following the murder. He appeared visibly shaken but cooperative. When asked why he hadn't come forward with the affair sooner, Patrick admitted he didn't want to hurt his friend. But the police couldn't ignore the possibility that Patrick's silence and close relationship with both Joel and Rebecca might have given him a motive. While Patrick's involvement in the affair added another layer of complexity to the case, there was no physical evidence linking him to the murder scene. Still, his proximity to the crime and his relationship with both the bride and the victim kept him firmly on the list of suspects. It wasn't until the police took a closer look at the chaos unfolding at the Donovan wedding that they began to piece together the truth. The murder investigation had already examined Rebecca, Joel's bride, and Patrick, the best man, as suspects. But as more guests were interviewed, attention shifted to someone who, at first, seemed like an unlikely culprit, Joel's own mother, Patricia Donovan. Patricia Donovan, 61, had built a reputation in Boston as a successful diner owner. She was well known for her strong work ethic and no-nonsense attitude, but underneath that polished exterior, Patricia had been hiding a secret affair with her son's fiancée, Rebecca. The affair had been going on for months, and Joel discovered the shocking truth just hours before the wedding. According to a close friend of the couple, Joel had walked in on Rebecca and Patricia having sex in the bed of their honeymoon suite moments before the ceremony. Overwhelmed with heartbreak and anger, Joel decided to expose their affair during his wedding speech. In front of the entire crowd, he screamed, "My wife's a cheater," bringing their secret out into the open. This public humiliation was too much for Patricia. As she stood there, reeling from the shock of being exposed by her own son, Patricia snapped. Overcome with a mixture of rage and desperation, she changed into a hoodie and jeans before grabbing a knife from the nearby wedding cake table. In a blind fury, she stabbed Joel multiple times in the chest. Guests watched in horror, unable to comprehend how the joyous occasion had turned so violently tragic. Investigators had initially suspected Rebecca, but as they combed through witness statements and pieced together the timeline of events, they realized Patricia's behavior was more suspicious. Surveillance footage from the venue showed Patricia acting nervously in the moments leading up to the stabbing, and multiple guests reported seeing her approach Joel just before the attack. On March 2, 2020, police arrested Patricia Donovan at her home in Boston. She didn't seem surprised. In fact, she showed little emotion as officers led her away in handcuffs. The news of Patricia's arrest devastated Joel's family and friends. The thought of a mother killing her own son over an affair left them heartbroken and searching for answers. Many struggled to understand how Patricia's secret obsession had turned so deadly. The trial of Patricia Donovan began in late November 2021 back at the Pima County Superior Court in Arizona. The prosecution, led by 45-year-old Assistant District Attorney Maria Foxcomb, laid out a clear and shocking case. Foxcomb, known for her methodical and passionate approach, argued that Patricia had been driven by a toxic combination of shame, obsession, and jealousy. She painted a picture of a woman so desperate to protect her affair with her son's fiancée that she resorted to murder when it was exposed in front of all their wedding guests. Foxcomb played surveillance footage from the wedding venue showing Patricia's erratic behavior leading up to the stabbing. She called multiple witnesses who had seen Patricia grabbing the knife intended for the wedding cake and using it to fatally stab her son, Joel Donovan. On the defense side was 54-year-old Mark Dempsey, a seasoned attorney known for his skill in high-profile cases. Dempsey argued that Patricia acted out of a moment of intense emotional distress and shouldn't be held fully responsible for her actions. He claimed the public humiliation caused by Joel's outburst had pushed her into a temporary psychotic break. Dempsey tried to convince the jury that Patricia's mental state should lead to a reduced charge of manslaughter instead of murder. The jury deliberated for just under 2 days. On December 15, 2021, Patricia Donovan was found guilty of second-degree murder. The sentencing was swift, minus 20 years to life in an Arizona state prison. Many of Joel's family members felt that justice had been served, but the pain of losing him in such a horrific way would never fade. Patricia, on the other hand, showed little reaction to the verdict, staring blankly as the sentence was read. The verdict left a lasting impact on everyone involved. Joel's friends and family were left to pick up the pieces, grappling with the complicated emotions of love, betrayal, and loss. After Patricia Donovan's trial and sentencing, life for everyone involved took a dramatic turn. The Donovan family, once well respected in their Boston community, was now overshadowed by the tragic events that unfolded in Moren, Arizona. Rebecca Abernethy Donovan, Patricia's lover, and Joel's widow, faced intense public scrutiny. Shunned by many in Boston, Rebecca struggled to find stability. She left her marketing job, unable to cope with the backlash from both her professional and personal circles. She also moved to a different city to escape the constant media attention. Rebecca's former colleagues at her old job, a marketing firm known for its innovative campaigns, expressed shock and disappointment over the scandal. In contrast, Patrick Daniel Walsh, Joel's best man, tried to rebuild his life. Though he was never charged with any crime, Patrick faced significant fallout due to his affair with Rebecca. His reputation as a school teacher suffered, and he found it hard to maintain his friendships and professional relationships. Patrick took a leave of absence from his teaching position at Boston's East End Middle School and started a new job in a different state, away from the intense scrutiny of his past. Patricia Donovan began serving her 20-to-life sentence in a state prison in Arizona. Her once orderly life had unraveled completely. Patricia's incarceration was marked by a series of struggles as she adjusted to prison life. The emotional toll of her actions, coupled with the isolation from her family, made her remaining years behind bars particularly challenging. The impact of the case extended beyond the immediate families involved. The Marina wedding venue, once a symbol of celebration, became a somber reminder of the tragedy. Local media continued to cover the story, keeping the community's attention on the shocking events of that February day. Life for everyone connected to the case had been forever changed. The search for normalcy amid the aftermath of such a tragic and public event was an ongoing struggle for all involved. Cali Carter was 34 years old and worked as an assistant district attorney in Galveston County, Texas. She was well known in her town for being very good at her job, especially when it came to fighting crime involving the many cults that operated in the area. Many people in Galveston admired her hard work and dedication. Cali was not just about her job. She was also a big part of the community. She often organized charity events to help people in need and loved participating in the town's festivals, like the annual Galveston Island Food and Wine Festival. Cali lived in a cozy house on a quiet street in Galveston. She was married to James Carter, though their relationship had become strained. Despite this, she remained hopeful and focused on her future. She had big dreams for her career and wanted to make Galveston a safer place for everyone. Cali attended the University of Texas at Austin for her law degree, where she graduated with honors. Her passion for law and justice was evident from a young age, often talking about her dreams of someday becoming the judge when she was just 3 years old. Her life was full of promise and potential, and she had a bright future ahead of her. Cali's family was very important to her. She had a close relationship with her parents, Linda and Robert Jenkins, who lived nearby in Houston. She also had an older brother, Tim, a successful judge in Montana who often visited with his wife and kids. Cali's friends described her as optimistic and full of energy. She was always smiling and had a positive outlook on life, even when things were tough. In the days before her death, Cali was busy preparing for a big case against a new cult that had begun attracting members around Galveston Beach. She spent long hours at the office, but still made time to help organize a local charity event to support homeless shelters. She was excited about the future and had plans to take a short vacation with her family after the trial. Cali's untimely death left a void in the community and among those who loved her. Her dedication to her work and her caring nature made her a beloved figure in Galveston. On the morning of June 12, 2004, Galveston was waking up to a warm, sunny day. The town was quiet, with people going about their usual routines. Emily Ruiz, a close friend and neighbor of Cali Carter, was worried. Cali had missed their morning jogs, something she never did. Emily decided to check on her, hoping everything was okay. Emily walked to Cali's house, which was just a few houses down the street. She knocked on the door but got no answer. Growing more concerned, Emily tried the door and found it unlocked. She stepped inside, calling out for Cali. As she walked into the living room, she was met with a horrifying sight. Cali was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. She had been stabbed multiple times, and there were strange marks all over her body. Emily's heart raced as she pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the operator.
911, what's your emergency?
It's my friend, Cali Carter. She's on the floor. There's blood everywhere. I think she's dead. Please, send help.
The 911 operator tried to calm Emily down while dispatching emergency services to the scene. Emily, still in shock, could hardly believe what she was seeing. She stayed on the phone with the operator, who asked her to wait outside until the police arrived. Police and emergency medical services arrived quickly at the scene. They found Emily outside, still in tears and clearly traumatized. The police immediately began to assess the scene and secure the perimeter. They called in forensics experts to help gather evidence. As news of the murder spread through Galveston, the community was in shock. Cali Carter was a well-known and respected figure, and her violent death left everyone reeling. The small town known for its beach and pier was suddenly the center of a major crime investigation. The police arrived at Cali Carter's house quickly after Emily Ruiz's 911 call on the morning of June 12, 2004. It was a sunny day in Galveston, Texas, but the scene inside the house was grim. Detective Sarah Jenkins and Officer Mark Davis led the investigation. Known for their attention to detail, they knew this was going to be a tough case. Detective Jenkins, a cousin of Cali and a seasoned investigator with a calm demeanor, took charge immediately. She directed the officers to secure the area and keep onlookers away. Officer Davis, who was younger and eager, followed her lead, making sure everything was handled by the book. The crime scene in Cali's living room was chaotic. Blood was splattered on the walls and furniture, showing signs of a violent struggle. Cali's body lay in the middle of the room, with multiple stab wounds and strange marks on her skin. The letter Z had been branded in several places on her body, adding a disturbing element to the scene. Forensics experts arrived and began their work. They used luminol to check for hidden blood traces, revealing more about the brutal attack. They dusted for fingerprints, collected hair and fiber samples, and carefully photographed the entire area. The forensics team worked methodically, knowing that every piece of evidence could be crucial. Detective Jenkins noticed a broken vase and some scattered papers, which suggested a fight had taken place. She pointed these out to Officer Davis, who made detailed notes. They also found a bloody knife in the kitchen sink, which was quickly bagged as evidence. While Jenkins and Davis were busy inside, officers canvassed the neighborhood, talking to anyone who might have seen or heard something unusual. A few neighbors reported hearing loud noises the night before, but no one had called the police. As the investigation continued, Jenkins and Davis discussed possible motives. They knew Cali was working on prosecuting a strange cult that had been attracting hundreds of converts in the Galveston area. The branding with the letter Z seemed like a possible link to the cult. Detective Jenkins also remembered that Cali's husband, James Carter, had a troubled past and a rocky relationship with Cali. They decided to question him as soon as possible. The detectives knew they had to consider all possibilities and leave no stone unturned. James Carter, 36, was the first suspect in the investigation. He was Cali's husband, and their relationship had been increasingly rocky. James was known around Galveston as a lazy, unemployed man, very different from his successful wife. People often saw him arguing with Cali in public. James had a history of cheating and had been acting strangely in the weeks before Cali's murder. The police brought James in for questioning on the afternoon of June 12, 2004. Detective Sarah Jenkins and Officer Mark Davis conducted the interrogation. James appeared nervous and restless, shifting in his seat and avoiding eye contact.
Where were you last night?
I was home, watching Jay Leno and the Reagan funeral.
Can anyone confirm that?
No, not really. Cali went to bed early. I was alone.
Detective Jenkins took note of his inconsistent alibi. She knew they needed more to go on, so she continued to probe.
We found a bloody knife in your kitchen sink. How do you explain that?
I don't know. I didn't touch no knife.
As the questioning continued, James's story seemed to fall apart. He couldn't provide a clear timeline of his actions the night Cali was murdered. His behavior became more erratic, and he started to sweat.
James, we know you'd been having an affair with a woman named Maureen. Did Cali find out about her?
She knew. But that ain't mean I killed her.
Throughout the interrogation, James' responses were inconsistent and unconvincing. Detective Jenkins decided to take a break and regroup. They needed to verify his alibi and gather more evidence before they could move forward. The police also searched James' personal belongings and found troubling evidence. There were sexually explicit letters from several women. They also found a hidden stash of $3,000, raising more questions about James' activities. As the day went on, it became clear that James Carter was hiding something. The detectives knew they had to keep digging to uncover the truth. They decided to question Maureen next, hoping to find more links between her and James. Galveston was buzzing with rumors about the case. Everyone was eager for answers, and the police were determined to provide them. They worked tirelessly, knowing that every detail could bring them closer to solving the murder of Cali Carter. The second suspect in the investigation was Maureen Afterpines, 56, the secretive leader of Xenon philosophy, a new cult that had been quickly gaining popularity around Galveston. The teachings of the group were based on the 1999 Disney Channel original movie Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century.
Hello, I am Maureen Afterpines, agent of Lady Xenon Carr. Today I invite you to explore Xenon philosophy, a futuristic vision and a prophecy of humanity's evolution towards cosmic enlightenment. Through chanting of Lord Protozo's sacred lyrics, we attune our souls to the cosmic frequencies, preparing ourselves for the journey towards higher realms of existence. Our sacred branding of the letter Z symbolizes our commitment to Xenon philosophy as we embark on the path of spiritual enlightenment. We are not just individuals, but a cosmic community united by our shared vision. As we journey towards the stars, let us embrace the teachings of the Xenon philosophy, for within its wisdom lies the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe and the boundless potential of our souls. May the light of Lady Xenon guide us on our cosmic voyage. Cetus Lupitus.
The group believed that the futuristic vision presented in the movie, known to members as Xenon philosophy, was a prophetic glimpse into humanity's destiny, and that a character in the movie, Protozo, a rock star, was a prophet whose lyrics contained hidden messages and spiritual truths. Members considered his songs to be sacred texts, often reciting and analyzing them for guidance. They believed that through spiritual purity and adherence to their teachings, members would travel to the space station featured in the movie. More importantly, the group considered the letter Z, short for Xenon, to be a holy symbol representing the ultimate spiritual journey. Members believed that the Z had protective and purifying powers and often used it in rituals and branding. Initiation involved a branding ceremony, where new members received a Z mark. This, combined with the fact that Cali Carter had been preparing to prosecute the cult for stockpiling weapons, made Maureen a key person of interest. Detective Sarah Jenkins and Officer Mark Davis brought Maureen in for questioning on June 13, 2004. Maureen arrived at the station dressed in 5 to 11 tactical wear. Her usual calm and composed demeanor was deeply unsettling. When asked about her whereabouts the night Cali was murdered, Maureen claimed she was at the group's headquarters leading their evening meditation. She insisted that hundreds of followers could confirm her alibi. The detectives knew they needed to verify this, but continued to press her about her relationship with Cali and the prosecution case. Maureen maintained that she and Cali had no personal quarrel, and that she was simply doing her job as Cali was doing hers. Despite her calm exterior, the detectives sensed Maureen was hiding something. They questioned her about her connection with James Carter, noting how he admitted to a sexual relationship with E. Maureen admitted to having spoken with James a few times but denied any romantic involvement. The detectives presented Maureen with letters found in James' belongings that suggested a deeper connection between them. Maureen dismissed the letters, stating that she wrote to thousands of prospective members and implying that the letters meant nothing. As the interrogation continued, Maureen's responses remained measured and deliberate. She never lost her composure, even when the detectives brought up the brandings of the letter Z found on Cali's body, a symbol associated with Xenon philosophy. Maureen brushed off the connection, stating that many things start with the letter Z, and it did not implicate her or her followers. The detectives ended the interrogation, planning to verify her alibi with her followers and dig deeper into Maureen's background and the group's activities. They returned to the crime scene, re-examining everything for any connections to Moren or her cult. They interviewed members and looked into the group's finances and records, uncovering a complex web of relationships and secrets. Meanwhile, the community was in a state of unease. News of the murder and the involvement of the strange cult had everyone on edge. People were talking about it in cafes at the beach and on the popular local radio station KGL. Detective Jenkins and Officer Davis were determined to uncover the truth. They knew that every detail mattered and that Maureen Zaftrapines was a critical piece of the puzzle. As the investigation into Cali Carter's murder unfolded, the focus shifted to uncovering new evidence that could shed light on the events leading up to her death. Maureen Zaftrapines, a leader of Xenon philosophy, initially emerged as a suspect due to her connection with James Carter and the contentious relationship between the Carters. As detectives delved deeper, though, they found that Maureen's alibi was solid, supported by corroborating evidence and witness testimonies. However, while she was not directly implicated in Cali's murder, it became clear that while she had been involved in an affair with James. Nevertheless, a significant revelation emerged during the investigation. Maureen had been blackmailing Cali. Threatening to expose their affair with James, Maureen pressured Cali to abandon her prosecution of Xenon philosophy. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the case, suggesting a motive rooted in personal vendetta and coercion. The blackmailing scheme exerted immense pressure on Cali, worsening tensions within her marriage and contributing to James's already unstable mental state. The realization that his extramarital affair was at risk of exposure, coupled with the prospect of financial ruin resulting from Cali's intention to leave him, possibly pushed James to a breaking point. The police, armed with this newfound understanding of the circumstances surrounding Cali's murder, intensified their scrutiny of James Carter. His erratic behavior, history of infidelity, and the mounting evidence linking him to the crime scene made him a prime suspect in their eyes. Meanwhile, the revelation of Maureen's blackmailing tactics sent shockwaves through the community, prompting widespread speculation and scrutiny of the Xenon philosophy. Galveston's residents grappled with the unsettling realization that their beloved assistant district attorney had been ensnared in a web of deceit and manipulation orchestrated by those closest to her. The third suspect in the investigation was Michael Lawson, an 82-year-old local police officer with a long history in Galveston. Michael had a complicated relationship with Cali Carter. They had dated briefly before she married James, and rumors suggested that his patronage helped her rise quickly to the position of assistant district attorney. Michael had never fully moved on from their relationship and was known to harbor lingering feelings for Cali. On June 14, 2004, detectives decided to bring Michael in for questioning. His advanced age and distinguished career in law enforcement added a layer of complexity to the investigation. Michael arrived at the station in his uniform, carrying himself with the dignity of a seasoned officer, but there was a noticeable tension in his demeanor. Detectives Sarah Jenkins and Mark Davis led the interrogation, keen to understand Michael's potential involvement in the case. They began by asking about his relationship with Cali and his whereabouts on the night of her murder. Michael stated that he had been at home, alone, reading a book about World War II, his favorite historical period. The detectives found his alibi weak and decided to dig deeper. They asked about his feelings for Cali and if he had any contact with her recently. Michael admitted that he still cared for Cali, but denied any recent interactions beyond professional encounters. He appeared calm but evasive when pressed for details, raising suspicions about his true involvement. In addition to questioning Michael, the detectives examined his personal and professional records. They discovered that Michael had a history of becoming overly involved in cases where he had personal connections. This tendency made his proximity to the investigation and his personal history with Cali more troubling. The police also reviewed surveillance footage from the area around Cali's home on the night of the murder. While they did not find clear evidence placing Michael at the scene, his long-standing infatuation with Cali and his erratic behavior in similar past situations kept him on their radar. Throughout the investigation, Michael's colleagues and the community were divided in their opinions. Some viewed him as a dedicated officer who would never harm Cali, while others believed his unresolved feelings could have driven him to a desperate act. As the detectives continued to scrutinize Michael, they knew that they needed solid evidence to either confirm or rule out his involvement. His age and status made the case delicate, But the team remained committed to uncovering the truth behind Cali Carter's tragic death. As the investigation into Cali Carter's murder progressed, the police began to piece together crucial evidence pointing towards the true perpetrator. On June 15, 2004, a breakthrough came when they found incriminating evidence against James Carter, Cali's husband. James, a 36-year-old jobless man, had a troubled past marked by infidelity and erratic behavior. Cali had recently discovered his affair with Maureen's Afterpines, which further strained their already tumultuous marriage. Detectives uncovered that Cali had planned to leave James and expose his affair, threatening to cut off his financial support. Faced with the potential ruin of his leisurely lifestyle, James's desperation drove him to a breaking point. Further forensic analysis revealed that James's fingerprints were on the knife used to stab Cali multiple times. Additionally, fibers from his clothing matched those found at the chaotic crime scene. The branding of the letter Z on Cali's body, initially thought to be linked to Maureen's cult, was identified as a desperate attempt by James to divert suspicion towards Xenon philosophy. On the morning of June 16, 2004, under a clear blue Texas sky, the police moved to arrest James at his home, which was also the site of the murder. Detective Sarah Jenkins and Officer Mark Davis approached the house with a sense of urgency and caution. James opened the door, visibly agitated and disheveled. As she and Davis placed him in handcuffs, James's face turned pale and he protested loudly, but the overwhelming evidence left him with little room for denial. The news of James' arrests sent shockwaves through Galveston. Cali's family, who had been anxiously following the investigation, expressed a mix of relief and sorrow. Cali's mother, Margaret, tearfully thanked the police for their diligent work but lamented the tragic loss of her beloved daughter. The community, already shaken by the murder, grappled with the revelation that the crime was committed by someone so close to Cali. Friends and colleagues of Cali were stunned, finding it hard to reconcile the image of James as the loving husband with the brutal facts of the case. James' arrest marked a critical turning point in the investigation, bringing some closure to a grieving family and community. The focus now shifted to ensuring justice for Cali through the upcoming trial. James Carter's trial for the murder of Cali Carter began on September 1, 2005, in the Galveston County Courthouse. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Linda Ramirez, 45, known for her no-nonsense attitude and sharp legal acumen, presented a compelling case against James. They detailed how his desperate attempt to silence Cali was driven by the fear of exposure and financial ruin. The prosecution's argument relied heavily on the forensic evidence. James' fingerprints on the murder weapon, the matching fibers, and the digital trail of messages and emails between James and Maureen's Afterpines. Ramirez painted a vivid picture of a man cornered by his own lies and infidelity, driven to commit an unthinkable act. In contrast, the defense, headed by attorney Ulcer Mitchum, 50, known for his smooth-talking style and high-profile case history, tried to cast doubt on the evidence. Mitchell argued that the investigation was biased from the start, influenced by the community's shock and grief. He suggested that the evidence was circumstantial and that the branding of the letter Z pointed more convincingly towards Zen and philosophy. The trial lasted for 3 intense weeks, with testimonies from forensic experts, character witnesses, and members of Xenon philosophy. The courtroom was filled with residents, journalists, and TV crews from stations like local ABC affiliate KTRK, all eager to witness the unfolding drama. On September 21, 2005, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and tears. James Carter showed little emotion as the verdict was read, his face a mask of resignation. The sentencing hearing followed swiftly. The judge handed down a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, citing the brutality of the crime and the betrayal of trust as key factors in her decision. The verdict and sentencing resonated deeply within the Galveston community. Some felt the punishment was just, reflecting the heinous nature of the crime. Others debated the fairness, given James' apparent lack of remorse and the complexities of the case. The trial's conclusion brought some closure, but also highlighted the deep scars left by the tragedy. Friends and colleagues of Cali continued to mourn her loss while trying to move forward, forever changed by the events that had transpired. In the months following the trial, the community of Galveston slowly began to heal from the tragedy of Cali Carter's murder. Life for many, however, was irrevocably changed. James Carter, now serving a life sentence without parole, faced the grim reality of his actions. In prison, he was known to be a solitary figure, rarely interacting with other inmates. Reports indicated that he spent most of his time in his cell, reflecting on the life he had destroyed. Maureen Afterpines, the leader of Xenon philosophy, faced intense scrutiny following the trial. Though she was not directly involved in the murder, the revelations about her affair with James and the subsequent blackmailing of Cali tarnished her reputation. Membership dwindled as former followers questioned her teachings and integrity. Maureen stepped down from her leadership position and retreated from public life, leaving the future of the Xenon philosophy uncertain. Michael Lawson, the elderly police officer who had been a suspect, struggled to rebuild his reputation. Despite being cleared of any involvement in the murder, the investigation had taken a toll on his career and personal life. Michael retired from the police force and moved to El Paso, Texas, seeking peace and distance from the painful memories. The case of Cali Carter remained a somber chapter in Galveston's history, but it also served as a reminder of the importance of justice and the impact one person's life can have on a community. Through collective effort and remembrance, Galveston aimed to move forward while honoring Cali's legacy. Rick Romert Rales was 44 years old. He worked as a real estate agent in Guelph, Ontario. He was very good at his job, known for being friendly and outgoing. Rick loved to make people laugh with his jokes and pranks. One of his most famous pranks was when he forced his wife, Carly, to get a haircut by getting her down to the floor and shaving off all of her hair. He posted a video of the prank on social media, and it went viral, getting thousands of views. This prank caused a lot of tension between Rick and Carly. Rick lived in a nice house in Guelph with Carly and their 2 kids in Shure and Wheels. Rick went to school in Guelph and later studied business at a local college. He married Carly when he was 30, and they had been together for 14 years. Rick's parents, Tom and Betty, lived nearby and were very close to him and his family. He also had a brother named Tim, who lived in Toronto. Rick was very active on social media, especially on Facebook and YouTube. He loved sharing funny videos and pictures of his life. He had a lot of followers who enjoyed his content. Rick was always thinking of new ideas for pranks and jokes to share with his audience. He liked to stay current with trends and often talked about popular shows and events, like Canadian Idol and hockey. In the days before his death, Rick was busy with work, meeting clients and showing houses. He was also planning more pranks and spending time with his family. Rick seemed happy and full of energy. He had a big personality and was always the center of attention at gatherings. Rick's dream was to become even more famous and successful. He wanted to grow his social media following and maybe even get his own TV show. He often talked about these dreams with his friends and family. Rick was a very driven person, always working towards his goals. Despite his playful nature, Rick cared deeply about his family. He wanted to provide a good life for Carly and their children. However, the forced haircut prank had caused a big rift between him and Carly. She felt humiliated and angry, which led to a lot of tension in their home. This tension was still present in the days leading up to Rick's tragic death. On January 15, 2009, the weather in Guelph, Ontario was cold and snowy. It was early in the morning, around 7:00 a.m. The sun was just starting to rise, but the sky was still gray. Carly Romert Rales, Rick's wife, woke up and went to check on Rick. She found him in their bathroom. He was naked and lying in the bathtub, which was filled with water. A hairdryer was in the water, and it looked like Rick had been electrocuted. Carly was in shock. She screamed and called 911 right away. Her voice was shaky as she tried to explain what had happened. She told the operator that her husband was not breathing and that it looked like he had been electrocuted. The 911 operator tried to calm her down and told her to stay on the line until help arrived. The first person to arrive at the scene was Officer Alan Carter. He was a local police officer who had been with the Guelph Police Department for 10 years. When he entered the house, he saw Carly sitting on the floor, crying and shaking. She pointed to the bathroom and told him that Rick was in there. Officer Carter went into the bathroom and saw Rick in the tub. It was clear that Rick was dead. Carly was very upset and kept saying that Rick's death was an accident. The police were not sure what to think. They needed to find out more about what had happened that morning and whether Rick's death was really an accident or something more sinister. As news of Rick's death spread, the community was shocked. Rick was well known in Guelph, and many people couldn't believe that he was gone. His friends and family were heartbroken, and everyone wanted to know what had really happened in that bathroom on that cold January morning. The Guelph police arrived quickly at the Romert Rales home on January 15, 2009. Detective Collie McKinney led the investigation. Detective McKinney was known for her sharp mind and had worked on many important cases in Guelph. She and her team immediately began to carefully examine the scene. The bathroom where Rick was found was very clean, except for the bathtub. Rick's body was in the tub, and the water was still. The hairdryer was floating in the water, and it was clear that he had been electrocuted. Detective McKinney thought the scene looked suspiciously neat, as if someone had set it up to look like an accident. Detective McKinney and her team used various tools to gather evidence. They took photographs of the bathroom and the rest of the house. They also collected fingerprints and any other physical evidence they could find. They tested the hairdryer to see if it was working properly and looked for any signs of tampering. The police talked to Carly Romert-Rales first. She was very upset and kept saying that Rick's death was an accident. She explained that Rick often played pranks and that he might have been trying to do something funny with the hairdryer. However, the police found it hard to believe that Rick would risk his life for a prank. Next, Detective McKinney talked to neighbors and friends. They wanted to know if anyone had seen or heard anything unusual that morning. Some neighbors mentioned that they had heard Carly and Rick arguing the night before. Others said that Rick had been acting strangely lately, posting more and more prank videos on social media. The police also looked into Rick's social media accounts. They watched the video of the forced haircut prank he had done on Carly. The video showed a laughing Rick pinning Carly down to the floor and shaving off her hair while she screamed and cried. This video had caused a lot of tension in their marriage, and the police thought it might be a motive for Carly to harm Rick. As they continued to investigate, the police found more evidence that suggested Rick's death was not an accident. They discovered that the bathroom floor was not wet, which could have caused Rick to slip. They also found some footprints that didn't match Rick's or Carly's shoes. This made them think that someone else might have been in the house that morning. Detective McKinney and her team worked tirelessly to piece together the clues. They used all the tools at their disposal, including forensic analysis and interviews with everyone who knew Rick and Carly. They were determined to find out the truth about what had happened in that bathroom on the cold January morning. The investigation was complex, and the police knew they had to be thorough. Every detail mattered, and they were determined to uncover the truth behind Rick Romert-Rales' tragic death. The first suspect in Rick Romert-Rales' death was his wife, Carly Romert-Rales. Carly was 36 years old and worked as an interior designer. She was known for being very talented and creative, with a keen eye for detail. Her work was popular among high-end clients, and she had a good reputation in Guelph. Carly was usually calm and mild-mannered, but the forced haircut prank had pushed her to her limits. It caused a significant strain on her marriage and her relationship with her young children, Insure and Wheels, named by people on the internet as part of a publicity stunt. The police brought Carly in for questioning. Detective Carly McKinney led the interrogation. Carly looked tired and upset, but she tried to stay composed. She explained that Rick's prank had humiliated her. He had shared the video of the prank on social media, and it had gone viral. Carly felt embarrassed and angry. Despite this, she insisted that she had not hurt Rick. She said that his death was a terrible accident. Detective McKinney asked Carly about the night before Rick's death. Carly admitted that they had argued. She was still angry about the prank, and Rick didn't seem to understand how much he had hurt her. Carly said that after the argument, Rick went to sleep in the guest room, and she stayed in their bedroom. The police also asked Carly about the morning she found Rick's body. Carly said she woke up early and went to check on Rick. She found him in the bathtub, with a hairdryer in the water. She was in shock and didn't know what to do, so she called 911. Carly's stories seemed consistent, but the police needed more evidence. To learn more, Detective McKinney and her team looked into Carly's background. They found that Carly had a clean record and was well-liked by her friends and clients. However, they also discovered that Carly had been under a lot of stress lately. The forced haircut prank had not only hurt her emotionally, but also affected her work. Some clients had seen the video and canceled their contracts with her. The police also examined Carly's social media accounts. They saw that she had posted several messages expressing her frustration and sadness after the prank. Some of her friends had commented, offering support and telling her to stay strong. The messages showed that Carly was deeply affected by what Rick had done. Despite Carly's claims that she was innocent, the police knew they had to consider all possibilities. They continued to investigate, looking for any clues that might prove or disprove Carly's involvement in Rick's death. They were determined to find the truth and bring justice to Rick and his family. The second suspect in Rick Romert-Rales' death was Mike Chattle, Rick's business partner. Mike was 40 years old and known for being very practical and business-focused. He was the serious one in their partnership, balancing out Rick's playful nature. However, Mike had become increasingly frustrated with Rick's lack of professionalism and the distractions caused by Rick's social media antics. One of Rick's pranks had even forced Mike to make out with Carly on camera, adding to his embarrassment. The police brought Mike in for questioning. Detective Collie McKinney led the interrogation. Mike looked calm but tired. He explained that he had been working hard to keep their real estate business afloat. The recent financial issues had put a lot of stress on him. He admitted that Rick's constant pranks and social media stunts were causing problems for the business. However, Mike insisted that he would never hurt Rick. Detective McKinney asked Mike about his relationship with Rick. Mike said that they had been friends for many years and had built their business together. He admitted that Rick's behavior had become more erratic lately, especially after the haircut prank. Mike said he had talked to Rick about focusing more on their business and less on social media, but Rick didn't seem to take him seriously. The police also asked Mike about his whereabouts on the morning of Rick's death. Mike said he had been at home, preparing for a meeting with a client. He had no alibi, but he seemed confident that he had nothing to hide. Detective McKinney found Mike's demeanor interesting. He was calm and collected, which made her wonder if he was hiding something. The police looked into Mike's background. They found that he had a clean record and was respected in the business community. However, they also discovered that Mike had been dealing with a lot of stress. The financial issues and Rick's antics were taking a toll on him. Some colleagues mentioned that Mike had expressed frustration with Rick's behavior and had even considered ending their partnership. The police examined Mike's emails and phone records. They found several messages where Mike had complained about Rick's pranks and the impact they were having on their business. In one email, Mike had written to a friend saying, "I don't know how much more of Rick's nonsense I can take." This showed that Mike was at his wit's end. Despite Mike's claims of innocence, the police knew they had to consider him a serious suspect. They continued to gather evidence and question other people who knew Mike and Rick. They needed to find out if Mike's frustration had reached a breaking point and if he had a motive to harm his business partner. The investigation into Mike's involvement in Rick's death was complex. The police were determined to uncover the truth and ensure that justice was served. The third suspect in Rick Romertrail's death was Emily Harris Kang, Rick's social media manager. Emily was 22 years old, ambitious, and very tech-savvy. She helped Rick grow his online presence and loved the thrill of internet fame. Emily enjoyed the benefits that came with managing a popular social media account, but her relationship with Rick was complicated. They had a secret affair, and Emily was jealous of Rick's wife, Carly. The police brought Emily in for questioning. Detective Collie McKinney led the interrogation. Emily looked nervous but tried to stay calm. She explained that she had worked closely with Rick for over a year. She helped him plan and post his prank videos, including the infamous forced haircut prank. Emily said that Rick was always full of ideas and that she was just following his lead. Detective McKinney asked Emily about her relationship with Rick. Emily hesitated but eventually admitted that they had been romantically involved. She said that Rick had promised to leave Carly for her, but he never did. This made her feel used and betrayed. Emily insisted that she cared about Rick and would never hurt him. The police also asked Emily about her whereabouts on the morning of Rick's death. Emily said she was at her apartment, working on new content for Rick's social media accounts. She provided her computer as evidence, showing the work she had done that morning. Detective McKinney noted that Emily's alibi seemed solid, but decided to dig deeper. The police looked into Emily's background. They found that she had always been a high achiever, excelling in school and earning a scholarship to a local university. Emily was very active on social media and had a large following of her own. However, they also discovered that Emily had a history of jealousy and had been involved in several heated arguments with other women over Rick. Despite Emily's claims of innocence, the police knew they had to consider her a serious suspect. They continued to gather evidence and question other people who knew her and Rick. They needed to find out if Emily's jealousy and frustration had driven her to harm Rick. The investigation into Emily's involvement in Rick's death was thorough. The police were determined to uncover the truth and ensure that justice was served. On January 20, 2009, the weather in Guelph, Ontario was cold and snowy. It was around 10 o'clock a.m. when the police received a call from a neighbor of the Romertrail's family. The neighbor had found something unusual while walking their dog near a park close to the house. The neighbor noticed a small hidden camera in the bushes and knew the camera hadn't been there before and called the police immediately. Detective Cali McKinney and her team arrived quickly. They carefully retrieved the camera and took it to the police station for examination. The team was surprised to find that the camera was still working and had recorded footage. They hoped it might provide new clues about Rick's death. At the station, the police reviewed the footage. It discovered that Rick had installed several hidden cameras around the house. He had set them up after the forced haircut prank, suspecting that Carly might try to get revenge. The footage showed the night of January 14 when Carly and Rick had a heated argument about the prank. Rick had accused Carly of being too sensitive, while Carly had expressed how humiliated and hurt she felt. The most crucial part of the footage was from the morning of January 15. The camera in the bathroom showed Rick entering the tub with the hairdryer. At first, it seemed like he was playing another prank. However, as Rick plugged in the hairdryer, he slipped on the wet floor and accidentally knocked the hairdryer into the tub, causing his own electrocution. The footage revealed that Rick's death was not a premeditated murder. Detective McKinney and her team were shocked by this discovery. They realized that Rick had set up the cameras to catch Carly, but instead they had captured his own fatal mistake. This new evidence changed the direction of the investigation completely. The police called Carly to the station to show her the footage. Carly was devastated and broke down in tears. She couldn't believe that Rick's death was an accident and not a result of foul play. Detective McKinney explained to Carly that Rick had set up the cameras because he was afraid she might retaliate for the prank. Carly was heartbroken, knowing that Rick had mistrusted her and that his actions had led to his own death. With this new evidence, the police were able to close the case. They informed the community and the media about the true cause of Rick's death. The community was relieved but saddened by the tragic accident. The investigation had revealed the truth, and the police have ensured that justice was served. When the police announced that Rick Rail's death was an accident, the community of Guelph, Ontario, was both shocked and relieved. The news conference on January 25, 2009, explained the events leading up to Rick's death. However, the authorities decided to proceed with a trial to bring all facts to light. The trial began in early February 2009. The prosecutor, Alan Allen, 45, was known for his no-nonsense approach. He was determined to present all the evidence, including Rick's emails and the footage from the hidden cameras. Allen argued that while Rick's death was accidental, it was important to understand the full context and the events leading up to it. The defense attorney, Margaret Golly, 38, was equally determined to clear Carly Rail's name. Margaret was compassionate and had a reputation for defending those wrongfully accused. She presented evidence of Carly's character and how the prank deeply affected her emotionally, but did not make her a murderer. During the trial, the courtroom was tense. Carly sat quietly, supported by her family. Rick's friends and family watched the proceedings, their faces showing a mix of sadness and relief. The prosecutor played the footage showing Rick slipping and knocking the hairdryer into the bathtub. This was the key evidence that confirmed his death was an accident. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On February 15, 2009, they returned with their verdict. They found that no one was guilty of murder and that Rick's death was indeed an accident. The judge echoed this sentiment in his closing remarks, emphasizing the tragic nature of the event and how it was a result of a series of unfortunate incidents rather than intentional harm. Carly's reaction to the verdict was a mix of relief and sorrow. She was grateful to be exonerated, but deeply mourned her husband. The community's response was supportive. Many people offered their condolences to Carly and her children, Insure and Wheels, understanding the emotional turmoil they had endured. The trial's conclusion brought a sense of closure to Rick's family and friends. They struggled with the loss but found some comfort in knowing the truth. Carly decided to move away from Guelph to start fresh with her children, hoping to rebuild their lives away from the memories of Rick's tragic death. The police officers involved in the case, especially Detective Cali McKinney, felt a sense of accomplishment for uncovering the truth. However, they also felt the weight of the tragedy and the impact it had on everyone involved. The trial's verdict and sentencing brought an end to the legal process, allowing everyone to begin the slow process of healing and moving forward. After the trial ended, the people involved in Rick Rail's case tried to move on with their lives. Carly Rails, who had been cleared of any wrongdoing, decided to leave Guelph, Ontario. She felt that starting fresh in a new place would be best for her and her children, Insure and Wheels. In March 2009, Carly moved to Toronto, where she continued her work as an interior designer. She focused on rebuilding her life and creating a stable environment for her kids. Mike Chattle, Rick's business partner, was also deeply affected by the events. After the trial, he took some time off to reflect and reconsider his future. By mid-2009, Mike decided to step away from the real estate business. He sold his shares and moved to Vancouver to start anew, focusing on a different career path. Mike wanted to leave behind the memories of the stressful partnership and the tragic loss of his friend. Emily Harris Kang, the social media manager, found it hard to cope with the loss and the scandal surrounding Rick's death. She took a break from social media to focus on her mental health. By the end of 2009, Emily had decided to pursue further education, enrolling in a marketing program at a local university. She aimed to rebuild her career with a fresh perspective and new skills. Detective Collie McKinney and her team continued their work in the Guelph Police Department. The case had been a significant challenge for them, and solving it brought a sense of accomplishment. Detective McKinney was praised for her thorough investigation and dedication to uncovering the truth. She used the experience to mentor new officers, emphasizing the importance of attention to detail and perseverance in solving cases. Rick's family and friends had mixed feelings about the outcome. While they were relieved to know that his death was an accident, the loss remained painful. They struggled with the fact that Rick's own actions had led to his tragic end. Over time, they found some comfort in remembering the good times they shared with him. The community of Guelph also felt the impact of the case. The news had shocked the town, but the trial and its conclusion helped bring a sense of closure. People were more cautious and aware of the importance of addressing personal conflicts and mental health issues. By the end of 2009, those involved in Rick's life had begun to heal and move forward. The case remained a reminder of how quickly life can change and the importance of compassion and understanding in difficult times. This case is a stark reminder of how quickly a practical joke can spiral into tragedy. Rick's playful nature and Carly's desperate reaction led to a heartbreaking series of events, forever altering the lives of everyone involved. In November of 2003, the city of Miami was captivated by the shocking death of James Pixon, a wealthy and influential figure in the local high society. At 65 years old, James had amassed a fortune as a real estate mogul, known for his cutthroat business tactics that had earned him a place at the top of Miami's elite. However, behind James' polished exterior, there lurked a dark secret that would ultimately play a significant role in his demise. Unbeknownst to many, James had a string of young male lovers, a fact that added an element of intrigue to the already complex narrative surrounding his life and death. Described as charismatic and ambitious, James possessed an air of confidence and authority that commanded attention wherever he went. He was a familiar face at the Florida Marlins games, passionately cheering on his beloved team. His dreams extended beyond his business empire. He yearned for genuine companionship, a longing that seemed to elude him even in the midst of his success. As news of James' death spread through the city, speculations would run rampant. The media buzzed with theories, each more sensational than the last. Some pointed fingers at his boyfriend, a young man whose identity remained shrouded in mystery. Others suspected his estranged son, with whom James had a strained relationship. Yet, amidst the swirling rumors and conjecture, one question remained. Who was responsible for the demise of this enigmatic millionaire? On a sunny afternoon in November 2003, the vibrant city of Miami was rocked by a shocking and tragic incident that would forever change the lives of those involved. James Pixon, a prominent figure in Miami's high society, met a gruesome fate that would leave the community in a state of disbelief. It was a seemingly ordinary day when the tranquility of South Beach was shattered by the sound of a loud thud. Sarah Leon de Rosario, a renowned actress in the world of telenovelas, was enjoying the warmth of the Florida sun by her pool when she heard the disturbing noise. Curiosity and concern compelled her to investigate the source of the commotion. Rushing to the scene, Sarah's heart sank as she laid eyes upon the lifeless body of James Pixon. The once charismatic and influential millionaire now lay motionless on the ground, his life extinguished in an instant. The shock of the sight was palpable, and the gravity of the situation began to dawn on those present. News of the tragedy spread like wildfire throughout Miami, capturing the attention of the media and the public alike. The incident took place in the midst of a vibrant and bustling city. where the streets were adorned with palm trees and the air was thick with anticipation for the upcoming Art Basel Miami Beach. The city, known for its glamorous nightlife and luxurious lifestyle, was now gripped by a dark cloud of uncertainty. As investigators arrived at the scene, the South Beach penthouse was meticulously combed for clues. The balcony, once a symbol of opulence and breathtaking views, now held the key to unraveling the mystery behind James Dupixent's untimely demise. The authorities, armed with their expertise and determination, sought to piece together the puzzle that lay before them. As the investigation unfolded, the lives of those connected to James Dupixent were scrutinized. His estranged son, his boyfriend, and others close to him would become subjects of interest for law enforcement. The web of relationships and secrets that surrounded the millionaire began to unravel, revealing a complex tapestry of motives and potential suspects. On that fateful November afternoon in 2003, the tranquility of Miami's South Beach was shattered by the chilling discovery of James Dupixent's lifeless body. The police, led by the seasoned detectives Emily Proctor and Mark Slavery, swiftly arrived at the scene to unravel the mystery behind this heinous crime. The sun cast long shadows as the investigators stepped into the opulent penthouse, its luxurious furnishings now overshadowed by the grim reality of a violent death. The room was stained with blood, a stark reminder of the brutality that had unfolded. The detectives meticulously combed through every inch of the crime scene, their eyes trained to spot the tiniest shred of evidence that could lead them to the perpetrator. As they meticulously collected DNA samples and fingerprints, the detectives couldn't help but wonder who would want to harm James Dupixent. The charismatic millionaire had enjoyed a life of opulence and success, but beneath the surface, there were secrets that could prove to be the key to this puzzling case. James's extravagant lifestyle had made him a prominent figure in Miami's high society, rubbing shoulders with celebrities like Britney Spears and Gloria Estefan at exclusive events and parties. His connections ran deep, and the detectives knew they had to tread carefully, as the killer could be lurking within these very circles. The investigation took the detectives down a twisted path, filled with interviews, alibis, and a web of complex relationships. As the days turned into weeks, the detectives tirelessly pursued every lead, leaving no stone unturned. The media frenzy surrounding the case grew, with newspapers and television stations speculating on the identity of the killer. Rumors swirled, implicating James's estranged son, a jealous ex-lover, and even a disgruntled business associate. But amidst the chaos, detectives Proctor and Slavery remained focused. They knew that the truth lay hidden in the intricacies of James's life, waiting to be unearthed. They meticulously analyzed phone records, financial transactions, and surveillance footage, determined to bring justice to the victim and closure to his grieving loved ones. As the investigation continued, the city of Miami held its breath, anxiously awaiting the resolution of this perplexing case. The detectives were determined to crack the code, to find the missing piece that would reveal the identity of the killer and expose the dark underbelly of Miami's high society. The investigation into the mysterious death of millionaire James Dupixent took a dramatic turn when the police turned their attention to Will Cooley, James's latest young boyfriend. At just 25 years old, Will was an aspiring artist known for his free-spirited nature and his passion for Latin American modernism. He had found himself captivated by James's charm and had eagerly embraced the opulent lifestyle that came with dating a wealthy businessman. As the detectives interrogated Will, they probed for any signs of jealousy or anger that might have driven him to commit such a heinous crime. Will, however, remained calm and composed throughout the questioning, vehemently denying any involvement in James's untimely demise. His alibi was supported by several witnesses who confirmed that he was at an art gallery event showcasing his latest collection at the time of the incident. The police, determined to leave no stone unturned, delved deeper into Will's background. They discovered that he had a clean record and no history of violence. Friends and acquaintances attested to his gentle nature and his unwavering dedication to his art. Will's innocence seemed increasingly likely as the investigation progressed. Nevertheless, the detectives couldn't ignore the fact that Will had been present in the penthouse at the time of James's death. They carefully examined the forensic evidence collected from the crime scene, hoping to find a breakthrough. Fingerprints and DNA samples were analyzed, but none matched Will's. As the investigation continued, the media frenzy surrounding the case intensified. News outlets across Miami were abuzz with speculation, and armchair detectives debated the possible motives behind James's murder. Theories ranged from a jealous lover seeking revenge to a business rival trying to eliminate a powerful competitor. The detectives, faced with mounting pressure, widened their scope of investigation. They began looking into other individuals who might have had a motive to harm James. Was it his estranged son, seeking revenge for a lifetime of neglect? Or perhaps a disgruntled business partner, desperate to gain control of James's vast empire? Nicholas Dupixent, a 28-year-old finance professional, found himself entangled in a web of suspicion following the tragic demise of his estranged father, James Dupixent. November 2003 would forever be etched in the annals of Miami's history as a month marred by a high-profile death that sent shockwaves through the city's elite circles. Born into a life of privilege, Nicholas had always strived to carve out his own path, away from the shadow of his father's opulent empire. A graduate of Miami's prestigious Coral Gables High School, he had honed his intellect and ambition to excel in the cutthroat world of finance. His relentless pursuit of success had led him to Wall Street, where he had become a rising star in the world of investment banking. However, beneath the veneer of accomplishment, a deep-seated resentment festered within Nicholas. The bitter divorce between his parents, fueled by his father's infidelity with a series of young male lovers, had left an indelible mark on his psyche. The wounds of betrayal still fresh, Nicholas had distanced himself from his father, vowing never to let him back into his life. As news of James Dupixent's tragic demise reverberated through the media, Nicholas found himself thrust into the spotlight. Journalists swarmed around him, hungry for any tidbits of information that could shed light on the enigma surrounding his father's death. Television cameras captured his every move, amplifying the pressure he felt to defend his innocence against the backdrop of a grieving city. The police, armed with their relentless pursuit of justice, turned their attention to Nicholas as a potential suspect. Detectives Emily Proctor and Mark Slavery, renowned for their meticulous approach to crime solving, delved into the intricate details of his life. They probed his motives, searching for any signs of anger or resentment that might have driven him to commit such a heinous act. Nicholas's anger towards his father was undeniable. The scars of his father's betrayal ran deep, leaving a trail of emotional turmoil in their wake. However, as the detectives dug deeper, they began to unravel a complex tapestry of emotions. While his anger was palpable, there was no concrete evidence linking him to the crime. In the days that followed the tragic death of James Dupixent, the investigation took an unexpected turn. A tip from an anonymous source led the police to a hidden compartment in James's opulent South Beach penthouse. Inside this secret hiding spot, a treasure trove of scandalous materials was discovered, shedding light on the millionaire's secret life. The compartment contained a collection of sexually explicit letters and pornographic photographs, meticulously organized and hidden away from prying eyes. These materials provided a glimpse into James's hidden desires and the extent of his involvement with his young male lovers. The letters, written with an air of passion and secrecy, detailed intimate encounters and rendezvous that took place in luxurious hotel suites and exclusive nightclubs. As the police sifted through the evidence, they discovered a pattern. The letters were addressed to James from various young men, some of whom were familiar faces in Miami's social scene. The photographs captured intimate moments, frozen in time, showcasing the allure and magnetism that James possessed. It was evident that he had carefully curated this collection, a testament to his insatiable appetite for sex and the lengths he went to keep his secret life hidden. The investigation took an even more intriguing turn when the police identified some of the individuals featured in the photographs. These young men were not just random acquaintances. They were rising stars in the world of entertainment and fashion. Their faces adorned magazine covers, billboards, and television screens, captivating the public's attention with their beauty and charisma. Rumors began to circulate, fueled by the discovery of this scandalous collection. The media, always hungry for sensational stories, seized upon the opportunity to delve into James's secret life. Tabloid headlines screamed with scandalous details, speculating about the identities of the men involved and the extent of their relationship with the millionaire. As the investigation continued, the police interviewed the individuals featured in the photographs, hoping to unravel the web of deception surrounding James's death. Each interview revealed a different side of the story, as these young men struggled to reconcile their public personas with their private sexual encounters with James. The third suspect in the investigation into the death of millionaire James Dupixent was Brody Leach, a native of Brisbane, Australia, who served as James's personal assistant. Brody, known for his efficiency and unwavering dedication, had recently become the subject of rumors within James's social circle. Speculation swirled that Brody had become James's new lover, causing jealousy and potentially providing a motive for murder. During the police interrogation, Brody maintained a professional demeanor, answering questions with precision and clarity. However, beneath his composed exterior, there seemed to be a hidden desire for a life of luxury and excitement. Brody's background investigation revealed that he had grown up in a wealthy neighborhood in Brisbane, far from the glamorous world of Miami's high society. After completing his degree at the University of Queensland, Brody decided to pursue his dreams in the United States, landing a job as a personal assistant to a wealthy businessman in New York City. It was during his time in the Big Apple that he first heard about James Dupixent, a prominent figure in the real estate industry. Driven by ambition and a desire for a better life, Brody made the bold decision to relocate to Miami and seek employment with James. He saw this opportunity as a stepping stone to a more glamorous and exciting existence. Little did he know that his path would intersect with James's mysterious death. Brody's relationship with James was characterized by professionalism and efficiency. He managed James's schedule, organized his appointments, and ensured that his business affairs ran smoothly. However, whispers among James's inner circle suggested that their professional relationship had evolved into something more intimate. As the investigation delved deeper into Brody's personal life, it was discovered that he had a penchant for luxury brands and a taste for the finer things in life. It seemed that Brody had become enamored with the glamorous lifestyle that James embodied. The police meticulously examined Brody's financial records, looking for any evidence of financial gain or unusual transactions that could link him to the crime. They also interviewed friends and acquaintances from Brody's past, hoping to uncover any hidden motives or connections to the case. The shocking truth behind the murder of James Dupixent, the Miami millionaire, was finally revealed. After an extensive investigation, it came to light that the killer was none other than Will Cooley, James's boyfriend. But what makes this revelation even more astonishing is the fact that Will was also James's secret son, a fact that was unknown to everyone involved. The story begins in 1977 when James had a brief affair with the famous Brazilian painter Diana Brices Cooley. Little did he know that this affair would result in the birth of Will, a secret that was kept hidden to James until his death. It was this horrifying revelation of his true paternity that drove Will to commit the tragic act of killing his own father/boyfriend. The police pieced together the evidence meticulously, connecting the dots that led to Will's arrest. The moment of his capture was filled with tension as the truth unraveled before their eyes. The arrest of Will left the Dupixent family shattered. Their grief mingled with shock and confusion at finding out about a new family member in such a horrifying way. The revelation of the murderer's identity brought closure to some, but it also reopened old wounds, leaving the family grappling with the complexity of their emotions. They were left to mourn not only the loss of James, but also the loss of the relationship they could have had with Will, had they known the truth earlier. The trial that followed the shocking murder of James Dupixent captivated the South Florida, as people eagerly awaited justice for the millionaire's untimely demise. District Attorney Francine Villa-GRA led the prosecution, presenting a compelling case that shed light on James's secret life and the motive behind his murder. Attorney Ulrich Capobianco, representing the defense, fought to unravel the complexities of the case and ensure a fair trial. The courtroom was filled with tension as the trial unfolded. Witnesses took the stand, recounting their interactions with James and the suspects. The prosecution presented evidence, including the explicit letters and pornographic photographs found in a hidden compartment of James's penthouse. These shocking revelations provided a glimpse into the dark secrets that James had kept hidden from the world. The defense argued that there were other potential suspects and questioned the validity of the evidence presented. They highlighted the strained relationship between James and his estranged son, Nicholas Dupixent, as a possible motive for the crime. The defense also questioned the reliability of the DNA and fingerprint evidence, suggesting that it could have been contaminated or tampered with. Throughout the trial, the Dupixent family sat in the courtroom, wearing Florida Marlins uniforms in honor of their loved one, their emotions raw as they relived the pain of their loss. The guilty verdict brought a mix of relief and sorrow. Will Cooley, James's lover and secret son, was sentenced to 7 years in prison for the murder. Some felt that the punishment was too lenient given the heinous nature of the crime, while others believed it was a just outcome. The impact of the trial rippled through the victims' friends and family, forever altering their lives. They found solace in the memories of their loved one and the support of their community. The media frenzy surrounding the case slowly subsided, but the tragedy of James Dupixent's murder left an indelible mark on the city of Miami. Following the shocking conclusion of the trial, the lives of those involved in the murder of James Dupixent took unexpected turns. Will Cooley, the murderer and secret son of the victim, found himself grappling with the weight of his actions behind prison bars. Seeking redemption and reconciliation, he reached out to his newfound family, hoping to mend the shattered bonds that had led to this tragic event. Meanwhile, Nicholas Dupixent, James's estranged son, finally freed from the shadow of his father's legacy, focused on rebuilding his life. Determined to establish his own identity in the cutthroat world of finance, he immersed himself in his work, driven by a desire to prove himself and leave behind the painful memories of his father's betrayal. Brody Leach, the personal assistant who had unwittingly become entangled in this web of deception and violence, embarked on a journey of self-discovery. No longer content with the confines of his role as a mere employee, he sought a life beyond the boundaries of his past. Inspired by the events that unfolded, he decided to pursue his passion for photography, capturing the beauty and complexity of the world around him. In November 2003, the city of Miami was forever marked by the tragic death of James Dupixent. The echoes of his life and the events surrounding his murder continued to reverberate through the lives of those involved. The impact of this chilling crime would forever shape their futures, reminding them of the fragility of life and the consequences of their actions. And so concludes our investigation into the tragic death of James Dupixent. This case serves as a stark reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the devastating consequences they can sometimes bring. In the wealthy town of Norwalk, Connecticut, Barbara Brlo, a devoted stay-at-home mom and wife, age 36, dedicated her time to caring for her 2 children, Mikey and Bubbles, and supporting her husband, David Brlo. She took pride in her role as a homemaker, finding joy in her family. Barbara's dreams revolved around creating a loving and harmonious environment for her loved ones. Despite the challenges she faced in her personal life, Barbara maintained a positive outlook, trying to keep the peace in her family. Barbara was a woman of routine. Her days were filled with household chores, cooking delicious meals for her family, and tending to the needs of her children. She had a particular fondness for baking, spending hours in the kitchen perfecting her famous chocolate chip cookies. In March of 1988, Barbara's life took an unexpected turn. Rumors began to circulate in their small suburban neighborhood about a mysterious man who had recently moved to town. His name was Mark Cassavetes, a charismatic and enigmatic figure. Mark was known for his charm and good looks, which made him the center of attention wherever he went. Barbara's path crossed with Mark's when they both attended a local charity event. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and they soon found themselves entangled rumors in a passionate affair. Gossip of affair became the talk of the town, with whispers and obscene stories spreading like wildfire. Little did Barbara know that rumors of her possible affair would have dire consequences. The events that unfolded in the following months would shatter the tranquility of her suburban life and leave a lasting impact on the community. On the fateful morning of March 12, 1988, the quiet suburban neighborhood of Pinecrest Hills in Norwalk, Connecticut was about to be shaken to its core. As the sun timidly peeked over the horizon, casting an eerie glow on the dew-covered lawns, a neighbor stumbled upon a scene straight out of a nightmare. Patty Myers, a middle-aged woman known for her friendly demeanor and love for gardening, had ventured out for her daily morning walk. As she strolled past the Brlo household, a sense of unease settled upon her. The usually bustling home, filled with the sounds of children's laughter and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, was eerily silent. Curiosity got the better of Patty, and she decided to investigate further. Approaching the front porch, she noticed the morning newspaper, untouched and abandoned. It struck her as odd, as Barbara Brlo was known for her punctuality and love for staying informed. An unsettling feeling crept up Patty's spine, and she hesitantly pushed open the front door. The air inside the house felt heavy, as if a storm was brewing. Patty cautiously made her way through the familiar rooms, her heart pounding in her chest. And then, she stumbled upon a sight that would haunt her for the rest of her days. In the pristine kitchen, where delicious meals were prepared with love, lay the lifeless body of Barbara Brlo. Her once vibrant eyes stared vacantly into the distance, forever frozen in a state of terror. Blood adorned the pristine white tiles, a stark contrast to the innocence that once permeated the room. Patty's hands trembled as she reached for the kitchen phone, hastily dialing emergency services. The voice on the other end of the line struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Barbara Brlo, a pillar of the community known for her warm and nurturing nature, had met a gruesome and untimely demise within the confines of her own home. News of the shocking discovery spread like wildfire through Pinecrest Hills. The tight-knit community, usually abuzz with gossip about the latest fashion trends or local bake sales, was now consumed by fear and uncertainty. The murder of Barbara Brlo had shattered their illusion of safety, leaving them vulnerable and searching for answers. As investigators descended upon the Brlo household, meticulously combing through every inch for clues, the residents of Pinecrest Hills held their breath. Who could have committed such a heinous act? Was it a random act of violence, or was there something more sinister at play? The Norwalk Police Department wasted no time in launching a thorough investigation into the heinous murder of Barbara Brlo. Detective Indra Romert and Detective Stuart Teamkill, seasoned investigators with a reputation for cracking even the toughest cases, were assigned to lead the inquiry. Arriving at the crime scene, the detectives were met with a chilling sight. The Brlo household, usually a place of warmth and love, had been transformed into a macabre tableau. The kitchen, where Barbara should have been preparing meals for her family, now bore the scars of a violent crime. Bloodstains, like dark omens, marred the pristine surfaces. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards under the detectives' cautious steps. The investigators meticulously combed through the house, leaving no stone unturned. They carefully examined every inch of the crime scene, collecting evidence and piecing together the puzzle of Barbara's untimely demise. The walls echoed with the soft hum of their conversations as they discussed theories and brainstormed possible leads. As they sifted through the evidence, the detectives discovered a number of intriguing clues. A single bullet casing, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, hinted at the weapon used to snuff out Barbara's life. They also found a shattered vase, its shards scattered across the floor, suggesting a struggle had taken place. The detectives meticulously bagged and tagged each item, knowing that even the smallest detail could hold the key to unlocking the truth. Outside the Brlo household, the investigation expanded. Detective Romert and Detective Teamkill interviewed neighbors, hoping to gather any information that could shed light on the events leading up to the murder. They spoke to Patty Myers, the neighbor who had made the gruesome discovery, and noted down her harrowing account. They also reached out to Mark Cassavetes, discovering that rumors of an affair were just that. As the detectives meticulously pieced together the evidence, the weight of the case hung heavy on their shoulders. The clock was ticking, and they knew that time was of the essence. As the chilling case of Barbara Braslo's murder unfolded, the spotlight turned towards her husband, David Brlo. At 40 years old, David was an accountant by profession, known for his charming demeanor and ambitious drive. On the surface, he appeared to be a loving and devoted spouse, but as the investigation deepened, a dark and sinister secret began to emerge. The police wasted no time in interrogating David, determined to uncover any possible motives for such a heinous act. They meticulously combed through his personal and professional life, seeking answers that would shed light on the tragedy that had befallen the Brlo family. During the interrogation, the detectives confronted David with evidence that contradicted his claims of innocence. They presented him with phone records that showed numerous late-night calls to a mysterious number traced back to a payphone outside a local diner. The detectives also discovered a hidden compartment in David's car containing a stack of love letters addressed to a woman named Karen, a colleague at his workplace. As the pressure mounted, David's calm facade began to crumble. The once charming man grew visibly agitated, his voice trembling as he vehemently denied any involvement in his wife's murder. However, his attempts to protect his own interest became increasingly transparent to the seasoned detectives. The investigation took an unexpected turn when a witness came forward, claiming to have seen David arguing with Barbara at a local bar just days before her death. The witness, also named Karen, recalled hearing heated exchanges between the couple, with David's voice filled with anger and frustration. This revelation added another layer of suspicion to David's already shaky alibi. As the investigation into David Brlo continued, the detectives dug deeper into his financial records, uncovering a series of questionable transactions. They discovered that David had been embezzling funds from his workplace, a prestigious accounting firm in downtown Norwalk. This revelation painted a picture of a man desperate to cover his tracks, willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain his facade of success. The investigation into the murder of Barbara Brlo took a startling turn when another person of interest emerged, Leanne Portmanteau, the Brlo family's babysitter and a senior at the local high school. At just 18 years old, Leanne was known for her youthful innocence and naive charm. However, beneath her seemingly innocent facade lurked a not-so-secret romantic obsession for David Brlo, Barbara's husband. Leanne had been babysitting for the Brlo family for over a year, developing a close bond with Barbara and the children, Mikey and Bubbles. She idolized Barbara, admiring her nurturing nature and the loving environment she had created for her family. But it was David who captured Leanne's attention, fueling her dreams of one day becoming his bride. As the investigation unfolded, detectives discovered a series of secret love letters written by Leanne to David, expressing her deep affection and desire for him. These letters painted a vivid picture of a young girl infatuated with an older man, yearning for a love that seemed unattainable. The detectives carefully analyzed the letters, searching for clues that could link Leanne to the murder of Barbara. Detective Indra Romert and Detective Stuart Teamkill delved deeper into Leanne's background, interviewing her friends, teachers, and acquaintances. They discovered that Leanne had become increasingly jealous of Barbara, viewing her as an obstacle standing in the way of her romantic fantasies. Friends recalled Leanne's obsession with true crime stories and her fascination with cases involving love triangles, often discussing them with a morbid curiosity. The detectives also uncovered evidence that Leanne had been researching firearms and their potential effects on the human body. They found a stack of magazines, including a March 1988 issue of True Crime Monthly, which featured an article on infamous murder cases. This discovery raised suspicions about Leanne's intentions and her possible involvement in Barbara's murder. Furthermore, witnesses reported seeing Leanne near the Brlo household on the day of the crime. One neighbor, Mrs. Karen Johnson, stated that she saw Leanne lurking around the property, peering through the windows with an intense gaze. Another witness claimed to have seen Leanne leaving the area in a hurry, her face flushed and her hands trembling. The police, now armed with substantial evidence and witness testimonies, brought Leanne in for questioning. The detectives confronted her with the love letters, the magazines, and the witness accounts. Initially, Leanne denied any involvement in Barbara's murder, insisting that her feelings for David were harmless and that she would never harm Barbara. However, as the detectives pressed her further, Leanne's composure began to crumble, revealing a young girl trapped in a web of obsession and desperation. The investigation into the murder of Barbara Brlo took a surprising twist with the emergence of a new suspect. Alex Bruce Coachman, a 17-year-old boy and the son of the Brlo family's neighbor, became a person of interest in this chilling case. Known for his nosy and intrusive behavior, Alex had a troubled history with the Brlo family. Alex's obsession with Leanne Portmanteau, the Brlo family's babysitter and his classmate at the local high school, was no secret. He had broken into the Brlo family home on multiple occasions, driven by an intense infatuation with Leanne. But it was his deep-seated resentment towards Barbara that made him a potential suspect in her murder. The police interrogated Alex, hoping to uncover his motive for such a heinous act. As the questions intensified, Alex's anger and frustration became evident. He struggled to maintain his calm facade, revealing a young man consumed by jealousy and desperation. It was discovered that Alex had been keeping a disturbing collection of newspaper clippings and photographs of Barbara. These items were found hidden in a secret compartment in his bedroom, providing a glimpse into the depths of his obsession. The clippings included articles about Barbara's involvement in the local community, her role as a dedicated mother, and her close relationship with her husband, David. Further investigation revealed that Alex had been following Barbara's every move, documenting her daily routines and interactions. He had even gone as far as to purchase a camera with a telephoto lens, allowing him to capture intimate moments from a distance. This unsettling behavior painted a disturbing picture of a young man fixated on Barbara, viewing her as a threat to his own fated lover, Leanne. As the investigation continued, the police uncovered evidence linking Alex to the crime scene. Fingerprints found on a kitchen knife matched Alex's, raising suspicions of his involvement in the murder. Additionally, witnesses reported seeing Alex in the vicinity of the Brlo household on the day of the crime. The police diligently pursued every lead, leaving no stone unturned in their quest for justice. As the case gained media attention, the community was gripped by fear and disbelief. The quiet suburb of Norwalk, Connecticut, was now at the center of a shocking crime that had shattered the illusion of safety. In a shocking twist of events, the true culprit behind the heinous murder of Barbara Brlo was finally revealed to be none other than her own husband, David Brlo. The police investigation, led by Norwalk Police Detective Indra Romert and Detective Stuart Teamkill, meticulously unraveled the web of deceit and betrayal that had engulfed the Brlo family. Driven by a toxic combination of jealousy and greed, David had orchestrated a sinister plot to end his wife's life and frame an innocent teenager, Alex Bruce Coachman, for the crime. His motive? To escape the confines of his unhappy marriage and start a new life with the family's babysitter, Leanne Portmanteau, who had become his accomplice in this chilling saga. The evidence against David was overwhelming. Through meticulous forensic analysis, the police were able to connect him to the murder weapon, a .38 caliber revolver found hidden in the attic of their suburban home. The gun, traced back to a local pawn shop, had been purchased by David just weeks before the crime took place. The bullet casings recovered from the crime scene matched those fired from the weapon, leaving no doubt as to David's guilt. But it wasn't just the physical evidence that sealed David's fate. The police also uncovered a plot between him and Leanne, detailing their plans to carry out the murder and deceive the authorities. As news of David's and Leanne's arrest spread throughout the community, shock and disbelief rippled through the quiet streets of Norwalk. The local media, hungry for a sensational story, descended upon the town, their cameras capturing the anguish and bewilderment etched on the faces of neighbors and friends. The aftermath of this tragic event left the Brlo family shattered and scarred. Barbara's children, Mikey and Bubbles, were forced to confront the harsh reality that their father, the man they once idolized, was capable of such evil. The community rallied around them, offering support and solace during this difficult time. The trial of David Brlo, the man responsible for the brutal murder of his wife Barbara, captivated the area as it unfolded in the spring of 1988. The courtroom, located in the heart of Norwalk, Connecticut, buzzed with anticipation as the prosecution and defense presented their cases. District Attorney Tom Valligance, a seasoned prosecutor known for his meticulous attention to detail, painted a vivid picture of David's motives and the calculated nature of the crime. He meticulously laid out the evidence, including the testimonies of neighbors who had heard heated arguments between David and Barbara in the months leading up to her murder. Defense attorney Michael Stevens, a charismatic lawyer with a reputation for his persuasive arguments, fought vigorously to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. He questioned the reliability of witness testimonies, suggesting that they were influenced by media coverage and the desire for justice. Stevens argued that there was no concrete evidence linking David to the crime, and that the investigation had failed to explore other possible suspects. The trial was a roller coaster of emotions for the victim's family. Barbara's parents sat stoically in the courtroom, their eyes filled with tears as they listened to the harrowing details of their daughter's final moments. Mikey and Bubbles, Barbara's children, clung to their grandparents for support, their innocence shattered by the cruel reality of their mother's murder. As the trial reached its climax, the jury retired to deliberate. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the nation waited with bated breath for the verdict. After several hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous decision: guilty. David Brlo, the man who had meticulously planned and executed his wife's murder and Leanne Portmanteau, his accomplice and lover, were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The sentencing brought a mix of relief and grief to the victim's family. While they found solace in the fact that justice had been served, the pain of losing Barbara would forever linger. The community of Norwalk, still reeling from the shock of the murder, found some closure in the knowledge that the person responsible would be held accountable for his actions. In the aftermath of the trial, the Brlo case became a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dark underbelly that can lurk behind the facade of suburban tranquility. It served as a stark reminder that evil can reside in the most unexpected places, tearing apart families and shattering lives. After the gripping trial that captivated the area, life slowly began to return to a semblance of normalcy for those involved in the tragic murder of Barbara Brlo. Leanne Portmanteau, the teenage babysitter who was caught up in the web of deceit and found herself in prison, found solace in the support of her family and friends. Leanne's dreams of a future with David Brlo were shattered, and she realized the extent of his manipulation and deceit. She distanced herself from the dark memories of the past, immersing herself in her studies and extracurricular activities. With the guidance of her prison counselor, she sought therapy to help process the trauma she had endured. As for Alex Bruce Coachman, the troubled young neighbor who had harbored an unhealthy obsession with Leanne, he faced legal consequences for his intrusive behavior. The court-mandated counseling sessions aimed to address his deeply rooted issues and provide him with the necessary tools to rebuild his life. The community rallied around Alex, offering support and understanding as he worked towards redemption. As the years passed, the wounds slowly healed, but the scars remained. The Brlo family continued to honor Barbara's memory through acts of kindness and charitable donations. They established the Barbara Brlo Memorial Fund, which provided financial assistance to local families facing hardships. The fund became a symbol of hope and resilience in the face of tragedy. And so, we conclude this episode of True Crime Case Files. The story of Barbara Braslo's tragic murder serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly idyllic lives. Join us next time as we delve into another captivating tale of mystery and intrigue.